Chiommi. Here. Supervisor White. Here. Supervisor Horton. Supervisor Schutte.
Here.
Mayor Bagwell.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you so much. We have the esteemed Pastor Haskins with us this morning. Would you lead us in some prayer?
Let's pray. Loving Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful day you blessed us with. We thank you for this great city, community, our home, and for the way that you continue to bless it. And we're grateful for all the people that make it such a special place, from our churches, our nonprofits, our service clubs, to our business community, our public servants. I pray that you be with our supervisors, mayor today, and grant them a level of wisdom to deal with the difficult decisions in front of them this day and help them to make what's in the best interest of Carson City. We pray in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for that. Looks like the Civil Air Patrol did not make it this morning, so we're going to move on. We have a special young lady with us today that's going to help us. Turn that green. Milana, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, take it away.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. And her family, they have Blind Dog Coffee out there if anyone would like coffee. She's a wonderful hostess. Thank you so much for doing this for us today. That's what it's all about, is the kids, isn't it? Okay, we're now on to agenda item number 6, which is our opening public comment. Signed up today, the first on the list. I have as Kathleen Franco Simmons.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. I'm Kathleen Franco Simmons, and I'm one of the appellants who appealed in the matter on 9B. We are asking you to please pull agenda item 9B from the consent calendar for a separate discussion and action. This relates to the Carson Valley Meats Incorporated versus Carson City and Carson City Board of Supervisors, relating to a commercial meat processing facility previously referred to as a slaughterhouse. The consent calendar is a place for routine, non-controversial items. And I believe that the slaughterhouse issue was one of the top 3 controversial items in the last 3 years. And we don't want to be left out of this process. We went through the entire process and we felt that we were heard by a majority of the Board of Supervisors. And we'd like to continue to be involved in the process. We're requesting the Board of Supervisors to appeal the decision of the First Judicial Court, District Court, to the Nevada Court of Appeals and/or the Nevada Supreme Court. If you plan to pull item 9B from the consent calendar for separate discussion and action, I'll withhold my further comments until public testimony is taken at that time.
I can do
Is there? I'm sorry.
I said I can do that.
Okay, and then I'll wait for
Okay.
the rest of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. So let me ask, Jennifer, are you going to wait till the item?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. French, did you want to speak now or at the item? Everything closed.
Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. Thank you. Thank you, Chair, or Mayor and Supervisors. I would like to second the consideration of taking off of the consent the I'm sorry, I dropped my things. The 9B, and I'll look forward to that opportunity. I'd also like to have consideration as far as the Prison Hill West areas trail considerations on 13K taken off the consent. And I'd also like to have 13L, the camera, more discussed. I'm not against cameras, but I didn't feel there was enough information about the locations they already are, the actual uses of the cameras. I had been told when I asked, because I had a situation where I had a tire going flat, and to pull in before it went flat to the tire place, Big O, I would have to run the light or I would be flat. I mean, nobody was around. It was like one of those days. So I asked, what's the camera for? Because I admitted to my having run a red light, but I had stopped and then went. So anyhow, they said it was for traffic signal timing. And I'm thinking now that some of those cameras are already for surveillance. And I'd like to know which ones and how many more we're going to put up, and if they're going to be traffic related specifically at intersections and such, or if they are diversified into other areas. I'd also like just make a public comment. It's hot. Watch out for your dogs, your kids, and your elderly, or anybody that you leave in a car, please. As security, I had to break into a car to get a child out, and that was traumatic. So don't leave us in the cars. And also, I'd like to just say that there are 4 new arrivals in Mills Park, red-tailed hawks, and just have people aware that there's newcomers and that they've been in the area even though they hatched and should have flown away. But I think right now it's just a matter of gathering myself after dropping things. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I have Lina Tanner indicating that it would be testimony at the item. Is that okay? Just want to make sure. I don't have anyone else signed up, but I'll give one last chance. Is there any other public comment? Oh, come on up.
Good morning, Madam Mayor, Board of Supervisors. It's a pleasure to be back in front of you. I was here 3 weeks ago today. Thank you for the opportunity to lead the Carson City Public Defender's Office. Monday was our first day. I wanted to bring you up to speed, and I wanted to give out special thanks to everybody in the city that made this possible. For the people in the audience who may not know, we opened up the Carson City Public Defender's Office in 2 weeks. And in that 2 weeks, we hired 5 attorneys, 1 law clerk that'll start August 7th, an office manager, 2 criminal investigators. We did 2 late-night interviews for legal secretaries or legal assistants and a senior legal assistant. I want to thank Shane McGowan from HR, who gave up his nights to be there with us so that we could do that. Everybody started July 1st. We were in there July 1st, opening up the office, but we wouldn't have been able to do so had it not been for Ron and his crew, Ron Reed and Andy Basadi. If I said that wrong, I apologize, Andy. They found us tables like this and chairs, not as nice as this, for us to use so we could do what you asked us to do, which was to represent the indigent clients in Carson City. We went to court on Monday. We went to court yesterday. We have a prelim today. We have pre-prelims tomorrow. We had 757 files transferred electronically. Frank Gabella and his crew worked very hard. They got us 8 laptop computers that we can utilize till we wait till our new ones come in. Furniture will hopefully be in the next 60 to 90 days. But in the meantime, we have tables and we're working. Frank's crew also provided us with a printer. We'll have a copier tomorrow. He worked overtime. Him and his crew worked overtime to get us 6 phone lines when they were telling us we'd be 4 to 6 weeks before we got them. We had them Saturday morning. We started taking phone calls Monday. We have internet access to laptop, which he told us would take us 4 to 6 weeks. We had that on Saturday. I cannot tell you enough how much we appreciate the maintenance crew and the IT crew and the HR crew for getting this to us. Most importantly, the office of the city manager, her and her crew, specifically Stephanie, Rachel, they worked overtime to get us the things that we needed to open up the door: paper, pens, stickies, file folders, boxes. It wouldn't have happened but for everybody in the city that did this. And for the people that are sitting behind me, I don't think the city gets enough thanks for the hard work that they do on behalf of the citizens. As this board knows, it's very important to have indigent defense services, and we're going to provide that to you as you've asked us to do. We will have an open house when we have furniture, and we hope to see all of you there.
Okay,
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. It's good to know. Good to know. Okay. All right, we're going to move on to agenda item 7, which is approval of our minutes of June 1, 2023. Did anyone have any changes, corrections, or anything? I'll take a motion for approval.
I move to approve the Carson City Board of Supervisors and Board of Health meeting minutes for 1 June 2023 as presented.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Okay, we're going to go to the floor and do some presentations. Have everybody join me. Floor. Oops, I better have glasses. This print's getting smaller. I just really love to celebrate when we see people in our community do such heroic things. Come on over here. You have to do it in public. So we just really wanted to have a day to honor Mary Grail. Whereas on June 17, 2023, a grandmother and her 4 grandchildren were shopping at PetSmart when the youngest grandchild started to experience a medical emergency. Whereas shift manager Mary Grail, who is trained in CPR, stepped into action, quickly assessed the situation, and started performing life-saving measures until the 911 crews were able to arrive. And whereas it is because of the heroic efforts of Mary and others like her that the lives of our precious loved ones have been saved. Now, therefore, I, Lori Bagwell, Mayor of Carson City, Nevada, on behalf of the entire board, do hereby proclaim July 6, 2023 as a day to honor Mary Grail for her courage and selflessness in taking fast action and saving a life. Pretty.
Mary, oh, you didn't get to go away that far.
She's not used to it. You also have to stay for
So,
pictures.
on behalf of the board and the mayor, we'd like to give you a Carson City Challenge coin in recognition of your life-saving efforts and making a difference in our community every day. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, do you have any family or anybody from PetSmart that you would like to
I
join
have
you?
everybody from PetSmart and my family.
Come on up, get the picture. It's all about celebrating as a community.
Yes, the reason why I am the way I am is this good person was because of everybody in my life.
Oh, see? We got everybody?
To the right.
Right, over there. Okay, and then our next proclamation, let's see if I got some Parks and Rec staff here. Come on up. We got to celebrate. July is Park and Rec month. Yeah, she's like, oh no, she's making me get up here. What a great team we have here with us today. Look at this. Come on, filter in, filter in. Hi, doing well. Pretty good looking team. Right? Yeah. They do a lot of work keeping our park and trail systems good. Oh, see? Okay. Whereas parks and recreation are an integral part of communities throughout this country, including Carson City. And whereas Carson City's Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Department's mission is to provide exceptional parks, open space, and diverse recreational opportunities to enhance the quality of life in Carson City while preserving our natural resources for future generations. Whereas Carson City is proud to provide safe spaces for people to connect with nature, find solace, and recreate outdoors. Whereas Carson City has more parks per capita than the national average. The city's park system consists of over 8,000 acres, providing recreation opportunities that help build a healthy, active community, which aids in the prevention of chronic disease, provides therapeutic recreation services for individuals of all abilities, and improves the mental and emotional health of its citizens. And whereas Carson City's natural areas are fundamental to environmental stewardship by improving air and water quality, protecting groundwater, preventing flooding, and preserving wildlife habitat. Whereas Carson City is honored to be a Tree City USA and the first Bee City USA in Nevada. Whereas the U.S. House of Representatives and the National Recreation and Parks Association have designated July as Parks and Recreation Month and called upon communities throughout the country to recognize the importance of parks and recreation. Now, therefore, I, Lori Bagwell, Mayor of Carson City, on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, do hereby proclaim July 2023 as Parks and Recreation Month in Carson City, and I urge all residents to spend time in their favorite parks and enjoy this beautiful region we call home. It is pretty spectacular, isn't it? Yeah, I feel, you wanna come get this? I feel pretty lucky to live here. There isn't any doubt about that.
Sure.
Oh, what they can join us this weekend.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank the staff. The staff is so amazing and hardworking. This is only a portion of our staff. We do have a lot of seasonal staff out there working, helping with kids, so many creative programs going on. But the staff really deserves a great round of applause and a thank you. So I appreciate all that you do.
Well, and then don't we have something special Saturday at Spooner Lake at 10 a.m., right? Capital to Tahoe. Come out and enjoy this new trail system that hooks us. I was looking at how many miles you could do that whole trail, and I thought, maybe not. Like 1,700 or something, right? I was like, what? So I might do 1 mile. But anyway, come and join with all of us. There's nothing better to celebrate than the beautiful outdoors together. So again, thank you.
Excuse me, did you say this Saturday?
Yes, this Saturday at Spooner Lake at 10 a.m.
Thank you.
See, I got a plug in. Watch out for that. I did remember. Yeah, so thank you all so very much. And all the staff for your hard work. I know our community appreciates it very much. One snap and it's done. Okay, we're going to bring this back to order here. We're now on our consent agenda. We're going to pull 9B for discussion. Item 12A for a voting disclosure, and 12B will not be heard because it's already been resolved. So 12B will be not discussed. Is there any other member that wants something else pulled?
Yes.
Mr. White?
9A, 10A, 13K,
Wait.
10A, 13K, 13L.
Okay. May I have a motion for the remainder of the items?
Give me a second. I move to approve the consent agenda consisting of item 11A, which includes resolution 2023-R-21, 11B, 13A, 13B, 13C, 13D, 13E, 13F, 13G, 13H, 13I, and 13J as presented.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect that was unanimous. Okay, we're then going to move on to agenda item 9A, discussion and possible action regarding the appointment of one member to the Library Board of Trustees. Mr. White?
Yes, I've pulled this item because since I've been on this board for 2.5 years, I have worked with staff to try to get these applications to come through complete. I have talked till I'm blue in the face. I will no longer vote to appoint an application that is incomplete. Not doing it. So, you guys go on and do what you want to do, and I'm going to vote no.
Okay. Any member? Anybody else? Of a motion? This is a returning member.
I move to reappoint Julie Balderson Knight to a term that will expire in June 2027. And because it's a reappointment, I'm comfortable with this.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no.
No.
Okay, thank you. Let the record reflect the vote was 4-1. We're now on to agenda item 9B, discussion and action regarding the First Judicial District Order in the matter of Carson Valley Meats versus Carson City Board of Supervisors. I'm going to take the public comment on this item in the same order that it was originally requested. So the first one is Kathleen Franco Simmons.
Thank you for hearing me. You should have received some late arriving materials. I lost count when I was trying to count it, but there are a number of letters asking primarily the same thing, that you appeal the decision or the court order in the matter of the slaughterhouse. I'm going to read a letter from my family, the Howard family, and we were appellants in that case, to the Carson City Board of Supervisors regarding agenda item 9B. We strongly urge you to appeal the First Judicial District Court order in the matter of Carson Valley Meats Incorporated versus Carson City. We live in the residential area affected by the proposed slaughterhouse. A slaughterhouse is not welcome in our neighborhood. It is inconsistent with our community and with the master plan. Since we were not informed of when the court appeal was being held, we were unable to attend. The ruling by Judge Russell is in contrast to the decision made by the Supreme Court of Nevada in a similar manner, also involving Carson Valley Meats. We would like to know that Carson City honors its citizens first, especially when they are so immediately affected by this type of decision. And the ruling makes us question that Carson City made its best case for its citizens. We urge you to appeal the First Judicial District Court order in the matter of Carson Valley Meats versus Carson City. Thank you, Diane and George Howard. And my parents are here, my sister here. I'm speaking on their behalf. I have read through several of the letters, not all of them, because we only just got them. I do concur with Jennifer Verivi's comments and Chris Carver's comments. They're very well written, and I'm sure many others are as well. So I thank you, and I would like to just suggest an alternative motion for you. It's included in my letter in the packet. It would be something to the effect of, I move to appeal the court's order in this matter to the Nevada Court of Appeals and/or the Nevada Supreme Court, and direct staff to take any other appropriate actions to aggressively support the Board of Supervisors' decision to uphold the appeals brought by the citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, perfect. Jennifer? Next.
Good morning, Madam Mayor and Supervisors. Thank you so much for letting us have this time and taking it off the consent agenda. Obviously, there's been a lot of letters submitted, and I concur with Kathleen Franco-Simmons, Chris Carver, Merlin Payne, Paula Peters, and all the folks that wrote in. One of the greatest assets that you have as a supervisor is access to tons of information. Unlike me and most of the members of the community you serve, you're privileged to hear certain conversations, you kind of know what's going on behind the scenes. And that is something that we need to hear discussion on, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted this to be removed. We want to understand why this decision is made, why we've heard some folks say that this is a done deal. Access to information is critical to making good decisions. Not only do we need to understand it, but you also need to hear from us. How can this be a done deal when the public has been omitted, excluded from the conversation? There's lots of ways to get information, and staff provides good information, and so do we, the public. Our opinions, our concerns must matter, right? They must be as important as those of staff, because we elected you. You are our representatives, right? So we want to make sure that we're heard, and we want to be part of this conversation. From our perspective, if this matter was a done deal, it should be to appeal the ruling. You were right to hear our appeals. You were right to uphold our appeals. When Douglas County was fighting for their right not to have a slaughterhouse in their residential neighborhoods, their district attorney reached out to concerned citizens to help them prepare their case. With respect, our district attorney didn't do that. Maybe that was a factor in the outcome. As Kathleen said, building a slaughterhouse in our community is one of the most controversial issues that has been brought before you in this past several years. Certainly, I've lived here almost 20 years in that amount of time. And what makes it somewhat unique is that despite some of the other very significant concerns, this is one that unites residents across the city, right? This isn't just about our neighborhood. This is about having a slaughterhouse within the limits of the capital city, which, from my understanding of the legislature, is in jeopardy. So I'm here to ask you, on behalf of myself and residents from across the city, to please appeal this ruling. It is inconsistent with what the Supreme Court of Nevada had to say, right? They're the ones that agree with us, the highest court in our state. So please consider it, and thank you for letting us hear some discussion on this matter.
Thank you. Mr. French, did you want comment at this item?
And so I have to backtrack a little. Denny French, Carson City. Thank you, Mayor and Supervisors. On the first suggestion of the trustees' application not necessarily being complete, I would have liked to had a little better understanding of that. But in lieu of that, and I feel that's very important, anything I filled out, if it wasn't filled out, they wouldn't even look at it. And so I think in the future.
We're
that-
on item specific on the slaughterhouse, and you'll need to address that.
I'm sorry, but I had to backtrack to even know what the hearing was on that. Can't hear. Anyhow, thank you very much. And as far as this particular deal, I support, you're supporting it and to go on with it. Better facts on everybody's end, help from district attorneys and everybody would be appreciated. But I really appreciate all the efforts that people have put in to question this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The last one I have signed up is Lina Tanner. And if I pronounced any part of your name wrong, I apologize. Oh, okay, good. Okay.
Sorry, there we go. I should know this by now. My name is Lina Tanner. I'm the attorney for Carson Valley Meats in this matter, and I was the attorney for Carson Valley Meats in Douglas County and before the Nevada Supreme Court. I wasn't going to make comment today and just let it ride, but I come here without prepared comments, but I am an attorney and I have the gift of gab. So I'm going to just say a couple of things. And it's really focused on what I've read so far and the comments that I've heard so far about comparing this case to Douglas County. This is apples and oranges. This case is different property, different county, different code, different standards, and most importantly, an entirely different system was proposed in Douglas County that did not hook into the municipal sewer system. That was a very important consideration for the Planning Commission and for the board there. In that case, it was a septic-based system with an elevated mound that allowed for evaporation of waste that NDEP had not yet evaluated, and so that was a big consideration for them. The one thing that I would say that is similar is the issue of deference and the standards that Mayor, you appropriately guided the board on when it came before you on appeal of the Planning Commission. In Douglas County, the standard was not in Carson Valley Meats' favor because they lost at both the Planning Commission and at the board. In this case, the standard was in Carson Valley Meats' favor, and they won at the Planning Commission and lost at the board. And that was a factor for the district court. And so what I would agree was initially a fairly complicated issue when it came before the Planning Commission. By the time it got to the district court, it was really rather simple. Was the arbitrary and capricious standard appropriately applied? The answer was no. And did the resulting order that came out of the board, did that comply with Carson City ordinance? And the answer was no. It is not the time to address floodplains and emotions and all of that. All of you handled, you heard a lot of evidence. The Planning Commission heard a lot of evidence and almost unanimously found that with 31 extra conditions, this application met the preponderance of the evidence for safety. Can anyone come before this board with any project and say 100% it's never going to fail? No, of course not. That's not reality. That's not the world that we live in. But this application more than met the preponderance of evidence, and I think that the court adequately recognized that. And we would ask that you go ahead and grant this. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have anyone else signed up, but I'll take a quick ad. Mr. Carver?
Chris Carver, Carson City. Good morning, Mayor, Board of Supervisors. Thank you for removing the item from the consent agenda and bringing it up for discussion. In the effort to be kind or nice, the board attempted not to find fault directly with the Planning Commission Directorate or the Planning Director or the Planning Commission, but this project has been fraught with errors since inception, from legal noticing to property lines, to discussion, to proper notice. It's all been a series, not a comedy of errors, but certainly a consistency of errors. The Planning Commission failed to listen adequately to the public and to analyze the data that was provided to them. That is textbook, arbitrary and capricious. Stacy, you were right on the money when you said that we needed to listen to the public, or you needed to listen to the public, and that time, again, is here before you. You need to listen to the public. A lot of information was provided by the residents, the voters, your constituents, that had solid data acquired from a lot of different places, but there is nowhere in the public record where that information was analyzed by staff or interpreted by the Planning Commission. So was your decision correct to appeal or to deny the appeal? I think absolutely that it was. And I think that the issue that would go before the court, should you approve an appeal, is exactly the same as Douglas County. Did you listen to the public? Did you evaluate correctly the information that was provided to you? And in this case, it was not. Give the public the opportunity to once again provide solid data that this thing is not wanted. We have public comment, we have a standing petition. There is mountains of data from other communities where these types of projects have not worked. Give an opportunity for that to be heard. Judge Russell erred, I think, in his opinion. The Nevada Supreme Court ruled that the Douglas County Board was right to include public opposition against Mrs. Sinclair's project, and I think that they'll do so again if you appeal. Do the right thing. Represent your constituents, please. Thank you for your time.
Do I have anyone else? Okay, I'll bring it back up here for a discussion, motion, thought. Anybody? Okay, I guess I'll give it a shot to, oh, Kurt, you wanted to? Go ahead.
I wanted to say a couple of things. There you go. In the original, I wasn't involved in the original decision, but as we move forward here, I've had a lot of discussion with people in the community, and a lot of that discussion has been for and against. So no matter which way the situation goes here today, there will be people very unhappy with all of us because there are people who support it and there are people who are against it. And it's that simple. Our job today is to make the best decision for the community overall and to be conscious of what might happen in the future either way we go. So not the simplest decision to make, but you can count on the fact that it will be a well-informed decision as we move forward.
Does anybody else want to comment? Supervisor Schutte?
I would like to second what Supervisor Horton just said. You know, I went back and listened to Planning Commission meetings, both of them, listened to the appeals, and read and reread this order. There is no right answer, there's no wrong answer. There is about looking at the big picture, and as Mr. Horton said, they're really, even when I, early on, you know, I go running and stopping and asking people, and there are many different opinions and desires on the outcome of this. So I would just let everyone know that we really take this seriously, and we bear the stomach aches and the gut aches of knowing that folks will be disappointed, and we strive to make the right decision for our community, and so I just wanted that on the record.
Thank you. Supervisor White?
Thank you. I would say that the community has been heard over and over and over on both sides of the issue. Hours at the Planning Commission, hours at this board. Myself, offline, I have spent hours discussing this with the district attorney's office, reviewing the case files that were submitted, looking at the different ordinances and laws that control what we do here. I've read everything that came in the late material. I cannot find a path to victory if we go forward. It's not there, in my opinion.
Any other? No comment? Yeah, okay. Supervisor Horton, are you wanting to make a motion?
I move to accept the court's order in the matter as issued.
Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you. We're now going to go to agenda item, let's see, the next one that was pulled was 10A. Discussion and possible action regarding an application from TLC at Blackstone Ranch for a 2-year extension of time for the approved tentative subdivision map known as Blackstone Ranch South. Mr. White, did you have an issue to bring forward?
Yeah, I'm pretty concerned that in this agenda item, if you look at pages 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, the maps that were provided, those maps do not reflect what staff has told me that they negotiated with this developer. What they negotiated was the easement would be mostly on NDOT property and only partially on the open space property. These maps show the right-of-way 100% on open space property. I don't believe that that's legal. Frankly, I do not believe my reading of question 18 and title 13, I do not believe the original easement as described is even legal. I don't believe that open space can dispose of this this open space property can be disposed of in the manner that it's been brought forward. I'm good with giving the developer an extension, so long as there is some understanding that the right-of-way will not be within the open space properties. And I will take you to question 18. Paragraph 1 defines open space as undeveloped. This developed road, as described, does not fit this definition. In paragraph 2 of question 18, it says that open space acquired and maintained as conservancy land. A developed road is not conservancy land. Title 1306.010, it talks about preserving and protecting the quality of the natural environment. Natural areas are intended to be preserved and protected. It talks about increasing the opportunity for passive recreation. A developed road doesn't do any of this. 13.06.100, a developed road easement is not listed as appropriate use of open space land. But I suggest that there is a way to get this to happen. 1306.120 says we can acquire a larger piece to protect a smaller piece and sell off the remainder. I'm suggesting that if this developer is willing to provide a couple of parking spaces in the area of that trailhead, or that trail, we can call that a trailhead. That's the sort of thing that is allowed within open space. And finally, I think there is a real fatal flaw in here in that we cannot dispose of open space property without first having a recommendation from OSAC. I don't see where OSAC has ever considered disposing of this property. So if we can move forward with all this is understood, then I think we can make this work. Secondarily, just because open space money was not used to acquire this property, Question 18 and Title 13 are quite clear that that doesn't matter. Question 18, in the first paragraph of Question 18, it says that open space property can be acquired from willing sellers or by other mutually agreed methods. If you get over to Title 13 at 1306.010, the third paragraph down, Carson City encourages residents of this community and other concerned persons or parties to donate certain lands or funds for use in the open space program. The Board of Supervisors may by resolution accept properties not acquired with open space funds into the open space program after a recommendation from the Open Space Advisory Committee. Nowhere in Question 18 or in Title 13 is a segregated management, maintenance, and disposal considered. Once it's in open space, it's open space. So I'm good with an extension so long as we all understand this.
So let me just recap a little bit here then. The 2 years gives them an opportunity to make sure they can pass any and every hurdle that is required by law and to obtain the proper permissions from the governmental agencies, which if necessary could include a recommendation from OSAC. OSAC is not a final on anything. They make recommendations to the
Make
Board
a
of
recommendation, but
Supervisors.
to this
Okay.
point, they have not done that.
I don't think they ever even took it into the property either. I mean, we got,
It is an open space property, that's been confirmed.
they had a meeting in which they accepted the property?
Well, I didn't understand that's what you
Yeah,
meant. No,
anyway,
I don't know
we'll-
if they have or not.
Right, but the 2 years gives them the opportunity to determine if there's any other Ts that need to be crossed. I guess that's the way we could say it. Okay. All right, I love it. Again, I'm sure our able-bodied district attorney's office will address that with Parks, Recreation, and Open Space. Supervisor Giomi?
My comment was just that the extension is specifically, the way I read it was the extension was to address the complications that Supervisor White brought up. That was the reason they were asking for the extension. Among other issues, obviously the state, in addition to the city and some federal issues. So that's how I read it.
And addressing the fact that this agenda item in our packet has a different easement map than what Parks and Rec has negotiated with the developer. These maps show the easement fully within open space. It can't be. If we put it mostly in the NDOT right-of-way, which is what Parks and Rec negotiated, then we can go forward as long as the trailhead is included.
Well, is this the tentative map that they submitted that we approved?
Yes.
This map?
Yes, that's correct.
So
So
rectify sort of what, so we're saying Parks and Rec's recommendations were ignored when this board approved this originally?
I'll just kind of provide a little bit of background if that's okay with you. So on page 70, which I think is the one that you were looking at, there is an existing access easement kind of in the middle of the city's parcel. So what the tentative map contemplated is a relocation of that easement to a different location, which is what that railroad alignment looks like. What the applicant has done is asked staff to review several different concepts to see if any of them might be a pathway forward. All of them require additional review by either Parks and Rec Commission and state and federal government or by NDOT. The alignment hasn't been nailed down at this point, so there hasn't been an approval of any concept. Staff has not done that. They will need to bring back that concept once they fully have their ideas formed on where it would be located and what it would look like in order to comply with the conditions. So the applicant's simply asking for additional time to do that research, solidify their request, and then bring it forward at that time.
And we'd get an amended map?
They would,
Potentially?
so the final map would come forward with demonstration that the conditions are being met, yes.
Any further questions? I'll take a motion.
I move to approve the extension of time as requested.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the extension of time. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we are now going to go on to item 12A, discussion and possible action regarding a proposed resolution conveying 1.133 acres of Carson City land known as 2621 Northgate Lane. Supervisor Giomi, may I have your disclosure, please?
Ma'am, NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have disqualifying conflict. In my private commitment, I serve as a volunteer board member on RSVP, and as a result, I have a fiduciary duty to that nonprofit organization. RSVP is currently a tenant at the Northgate property, and this item could impact the terms of RSVP's tenancy. Because the judgment of a reasonable person in my position would be materially affected by my fiduciary duty to RSVP, I do have a disqualifying conflict, and I will not be voting on this matter.
Thank you. Does any member have a question on this item? If not, I'll accept a motion. It's Resolution R22. Supervisor Horton?
I second.
Okay. Have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no, and any abstentions? Okay, let the record reflect it's 401 with an abstention by Supervisor Giomi. Thank you. We had, okay,
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
yeah, this is good news. Okay, we're now on to, let's see, the next one that we pulled was 13K. Discussion and possible action regarding contract number 233-00340 for Loomis and Associates, Inc. to provide design, engineering, and construction management plans for Phase 2 of the Carson River Trail System, covering the Prison Hill segment for a total not to exceed $442,120. Mr. White, a question on this?
I have some concerns regarding transparency on this project. As we know, there's a lot of public interest about what takes place on Prison Hill, and I think being as transparent as absolutely we possibly can be is very important. Now, in staff report, they're talking about using the AASHTO guidelines, American Association of Street and Highway something officials, whatever AASHTO is, transportation officials. However, when you go to the AASHTO website, all of their publications are behind a paywall. The public can't access what sort of specifications that staff might be using to do this engineering. Secondarily, on page 412, it says that AASHTO, that they will use the AASHTO responsive trail design. I don't find that anywhere in the AASHTO catalog. And so I'm concerned and want to encourage staff and the engineering company to be transparent and provide the public, if they should request information, what design criteria they're using. My second concern is the idea of waters of the United States, also known as WOTUS. Probably most people understand that WOTUS is in flux. It's been in front of the Supreme Court. It's had all sort of things happening to it. I just wanted to bring to the public's knowledge, staff's knowledge, and engineers' knowledge that on July 1, 2023, the EPA issued a statement regarding the status of WOTUS and encourage everybody to become intricately familiar with this very convoluted octopus issue. So that's really all I had. I just wanted to make these statements in public. And this paper on WOTUS has been submitted as late material, and it's available today.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay. Anybody have anything? Okay, that's what I just asked. Does anybody, that's what I just asked for. You have public comment? Go ahead, Robin.
Done discussing?
Yeah, we do us first and then you guys usually.
Good morning, Mayor and Board of Supervisors. I was concerned a little bit about this topic. I don't believe it's gone before OSAC, before it's come to you in terms of actually a design and actually looking at the maps, design, consider features of the project. I know this is just to, okay, I guess, approve the funding for the project, but I did think, I was concerned about going before OSAC first. It's a big and expensive project that impacts many stakeholders, our neighbors, non-motorized and motorized community in the land, upland sagebrush ecosystem slopes, et cetera, Clear Creek watershed. I appreciate Supervisor White's comments about WOTUS, and it is a convoluted complex. I noted that the Exhibit A addressed a lot of watershed issues. I think that the Army Corps of Engineers is pretty concerned and is following all the WOTUS changes, and their feelings, of course, is still, I believe, to protect the watersheds, however they need to do that. I'm concerned in terms of AASHTO as well, how AASHTO got into this whole project. I find it to be, I believe it's a federal transportation project, and I think the AASHTO roads are generally constructed along highways, which they are, 580 and along are like South Carson. I have big concerns about an AASHTO quality road being put in open space property, that especially that's conservation easement, where we are, the goal is to preserve in the wild state. So I was hoping that would be evaluated. And my concern is there isn't going to be public comment on this project until it's into 30% of the design. And I'm wondering, since it's so expensive to do all the permits and work with all the agencies involved, if maybe we could have outreach to the public like was done for the public purpose property at the watershed, water tower, and the Kuntz Trailhead that was discussed in an open house and then at OSAC, and the 2.5 mile trail really was not addressed. So I'm concerned about doing a trail around the 2.5 miles from Kuntz behind the homes at Gentry and through the OHV area that is 10 feet wide with 2-foot shoulders on either side. Most of our trails in our open space area don't have shoulders. That feels like a very road type construction, and we're actually using heavy machinery, road construction machinery, to build a trail, which AASHTO to me is more of a road, in a non-motorized area. That seems like an oxymoron to me. So I was hoping that we might have some public input about that.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
more?
I was just going to say I got my act together, but I didn't. Mayor and Supervisors, thank you very much. My deal when I went over what was available to me was that before I would turn it over to an engineer, I would like them to, for us to specify more. There aren't specifics about size, shape, or length even. And simplicity, clarity, and transparency were missing. And I think until we get that figured out, we shouldn't pass it on to a very highly paid set of engineers and have everybody roll into it. I just don't think the groundwork, even to have somebody up there yet, is like I'm saying, there's the simplicity factor is not there. The specifics aren't there, so I don't know. They've got a fire break between the houses and the original existing trail. And I'm thinking, well, if they've already got a fire break, maybe we could connect the fire break as an area for also a pathway. But to disturb what's already there without really having community comment would be really sort of, I think, it'd sort of be like, why do we as community even want to get involved if we're not involved? Because you read this, and I'd like to have a better understanding, but I'm not given the opportunity to think what you're even suggesting to the engineers. So before it gets to that point, I think more public comment, more observational things that I'm seeing could be just corrected by, hey, Mr. French, this is the size that we want to put it, this is the direction we want it to go, and this is the area of our endeavor. Are we making a street, or are we making a public service walkway, or are we making the path better, or are we making it a trail? It sounds like all the things that I've read so far is making a road. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Do I have any other public comment on this item?
And it's within my time, I'm sorry, but my question before wasn't stated right. I thought there was going to be public comment about every segment of things, and on several things I hadn't felt that there had been an opportunity. That was my intent in my babbling earlier. So just make it clear for me when public comments open, but don't leave us out. Thank you.
Okay, do I have anyone else on this item? Okay, I'll bring it back up here for any further discussion or motion. Just on discussion, just because I think I heard somebody asking, I think it was Robin, for more public comment prior to the 30% submittal. I don't see Miss Gamble. Do I see her? Yeah, she's there. Oh, is she here? Oh, come on up, Michelle. Okay. Thank you so much. I like to try and, when possible, answer the questions. I have found it's difficult to take public comment when you don't have any documents for people to have public comment on, but can you tell me how you approach or how you see getting to that 30% to then be able to take out for public comment hearings?
Great. For the record, my name is Michelle Gamble. I'm a licensed registered engineer with the state of Nevada. I work for Loomis and Associates. And we went through the RFP process, and that's why you have our contract before you today. So what we had talked with the city about for our public process was to get a conceptual trail on paper. We go out in the field, we look at different alternatives. We've actually done a fair amount of walking through the area, looking at the existing trails that are out there, trying to come up with a trail that we think would be far enough away from the houses, less obtrusive, get something down on paper, but then we could then bring to a public open house, and we could share that with the public, get comments about the alignment, the slope, the cross slopes, what we're trying to do, drainage crossings, et cetera. Give the public something where they can then see what we're trying to envision based on the input that the Carson City has been working on for a number of years with the trail system here. And then take that public comment and then move forward with final design on the project.
Okay, thank you. And then is there anything in the AASHTO design guidelines that you see as an issue? What specifically is going to apply?
No, the AASHTO design guidelines are typically used for roads in many areas, but they're also used for trails. They have a whole segment on different trails. And there's trails when you're talking trails, you have everything from, minor footpaths to very wide, formal, paved, multi-use trails. This is something that's kind of in between, and it's what the city's been doing with other trails throughout the community. It's typically a 10-foot wide trail. with shoulders on it to help protect the trail, keep it in place, looking at drainage issues. And that's typically what we've been doing in other areas here in Carson City. It's a multi-use trail, looking at just not necessarily just pedestrians, but also hikers and horse traffic as well. So the width of the trail is a safety, and many of the AASHTO guidelines are safety related. They're looking at longitudinal slopes, cross slopes, curves, making sure that if we have cyclists on the trail, that we don't create a trail where cyclists get going too fast and go around a corner and end up running into a pedestrian or somebody on a horse. So that's what the AASHTO guidelines are. We have copies of them. If somebody would like a copy of them, I'm happy to provide them. They're really not that exciting because it's all engineering and design related, but I find it interesting. But if there are any particular design guidelines, design concerns that people have, we look at it typically from a trail safety standard. So that's typically what they are.
And then, Greg, this particular project's been a while in the making. Is this something that OSAC is aware of? I think that, right, because we applied for a grant to begin with. So this isn't the first time, this is just the implementation of the grant to give a
Correct.
contract.
Yes, yeah, yeah, for the record, Greg Berger, and Trails Coordinator. So yeah, it shows in the staff report, previous board actions approved both the application of the grant and the acceptance of the grant. And the guidelines for construction are consistent now with what was in those applications, and also what was consistent in a prior supplemental application for Carson River Trails project that's been completed. So it's nothing has changed from when the Board of Supervisors made their approvals.
And you see the 30% design being taken in a public meeting at OSAC for people to come and comment? Or do you see it as an open house?
So when we have, what we've asked Loomis to do is to hold a public comment period, perhaps an open house with a 30% design, and then also present to the Open Space Advisory Committee.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Giomi?
Greg, can I just, I know I heard a couple of comments that they want to make sure there's opportunity for the public to have input. I guess my comment would be, yes, that was in the plan because I saw it in the plan. But on top of that, there have been previous opportunities for the public to make comment. The Prison Hills Master Plan was a document that was well publicly inputted. That's probably not good English. But I guess my question is to sort of connect those two. Do you take or do you share that previously gathered information with the engineer as that sort of moves forward, so that while Michelle is doing her design work, late at night with her AASHTO book and all the excitement that goes with that, so she has that in her head as the design is happening?
Absolutely. And as an example, we've already had the discussion about making sure that the trail is that we consider the homes that are on Gentry Lane when in design of the trail, to make sure that's not going to be something that's going to be overly intrusive. We want to keep a distance from the homes. We've had a lot of discussions related to public comments and design, and related to design.
Yeah. So. Okay. So there's a path there from public's input to the design.
Correct.
As we talked.
Yes, there is. And also I would like to mention that the Carson City Master Plan, like we've talked about before, does say that that trails in this community, where feasible, should be accessible to all persons, including those with disabilities. And so this is one of those areas where that feasibility exists.
Correct.
And so that's why we are moving forward with an accessible trail.
Well, I guess I would just add, like the meat processing plant, just because there is input doesn't mean that everybody's input can be included to the extent that they want it to be included, because it doesn't. You can't, if there are opposing views, you can try and reach a compromise, but oftentimes neither party gets exactly what they want. But I think the critical part for me is to ensure that the comments that are presented are at least pulled forward so that they're not just made and ignored. And that's what I wanted to get on the record, that that's exactly what happened. So thank you.
Supervisor Shooty.
Thank you. Greg, thank you for speaking to the master plan and multi-use. Can you, just for the record, explain what really multi-use is and why it is such an important part of trail building when able? Sorry to put you on the spot, but I think it's such an important.
Not a problem. So trail design, there's a lot of different, trails are designed for a lot of different purposes. And we have a lot of single track trails in this community that are designed maybe for more challenging recreational pursuits, mountain bikes and things like that. We also have a lot of paved multi-use pathways, which would be considered shared use or multi-use. This one is unpaved, but it is shared use, non-motorized. So it'll be accessible to hikers, to dog walkers, to equestrians, to bicycles, and to persons that have maybe limited access to some of our other single track trails because of disabilities. So it's a highly accessible trail, open to a huge swath of our community for multiple purposes that are non-motorized. And I hope that answers the questions.
Well, thank you. And I think what's really important about this project is, Carson City is a community for everybody and for all different ability levels, and to have access to some of these trails that people otherwise wouldn't. And in terms of those with disabilities, there are so many wonderful, there's so much equipment now available for those who would like to use it and for those who want to be out in the community, in the outdoors and appreciating our beautiful area in Prison Hill. So I think that this is such a positive way forward to really help include everyone in our community who would like access to this kind of recreation. So thank you.
Supervisor White.
Thank you. I heard the words today, open house. However, when I read Exhibit A, open house is not contemplated. I'm not opposed to open house, but I will note that on page 424, the one required public meeting with OSAC is scheduled for $16,010. So I want to be careful how we spend this money. And with that in mind, and considering that WOTUS is a wild card, should we put a contingency fund in this contract? Can we do that today if we need to?
No, if it's necessary, they can always bring something back.
Okay.
Nope, because we had an RFP, so we'll go with that. Okay.
All right.
Thank you so very much. I already had public comment, but just in case tried to answer the questions that the public asked, so I think we addressed those, so
Well,
thank you.
And I would like to point out too, going to the idea of we're kind of haven't done a lot of background work was mentioned today. This Carson River Trails has been a concept since before the lands transfer took
Yes.
place. So
Long time.
it's been a long time getting to this point, and all this does is start the engineering.
Correct. Okay. Supervisor White, a motion.
I move to approve the contract as presented.
I second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
No. Okay, we're now on agenda 13L, discussion of possible action regarding the proposed ratification of the contract with Flock Group, license plate reader, camera and software implementation and subscription for the Carson City Sheriff's Office for a total not to exceed $148,500. Supervisor White, you had a question on this item?
Yes. Well, actually, my questions have been pretty well answered.
Okay.
But I felt because of the sensitive nature of my two primary questions and the feedback I got from the community about civil liberties, I was hoping that the sheriff or his folks could give us the rundown on exactly what the worldwide distribution of the information definition is and Flock's definition of a third party. And just have those actually identified on the record.
Certainly. Which one wants to take a
I have the
stab at it?
emails here if you want to do it that way.
Were they answered, the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's see. So as far as the worldwide distribution, which is their policy 4.2, Flock's legal response is, we have no international customers. We are 100% laser focused on eliminating crime in the United States. For clarity, all data is securely stored for 30 days with AES 256 encryption with our cloud provider, Amazon Web Services. On device, footage is only stored temporarily until it has been uploaded to the cloud, at which point it is removed from the local device. At no point does Flock own the data. As such, the license is required for Flock to perform the services. Our license must be worldwide in order to satisfy requirements from cloud providers or third parties that want to ensure we are in compliance with such worldwide license standards. And then I had a question, what commercial harm was. It's specific to our commercial customers who want to use our services for the prevention of malicious or criminal acts against their company. And then as far as the definition of third party, from Flock Legal Counsel, if Flock is required by law to disclose information by subpoena, whether it is from a police department or any third party through the appropriate legal process, Flock needs to be able to comply. A third party could be any party to a valid court proceeding that suffered harm and obtained a valid subpoena. For context, a subpoena or witness summons is a writ typically issued by a government agency, usually a court, to compel testimony by a witness or production of evidence under a penalty for failure. It is possible that another government agency could be a third party or a non-government agency, regulatory body, which has been delegated the authority by a government body. However, the language is purposefully open in order to capture other circumstances where Flock is required by court order to disclose. So I've also reviewed the Sheriff's Department's policy 459.5, and I am confident that Flock is in compliance with the Carson City Sheriff's Office policies, and that our civil liberties are protected. And I just wanted to get that all on the record so we know where we're going.
Thank you. Can you tell us just a little bit about why purchasing, or I guess paying an annual fee for these readers, how does that benefit the community? Why don't you give me a little bit about the project itself?
Yes, my name is Brett Binley. I'm a sergeant with the Sheriff's Office in the Investigations Bureau, and I'm one of the project coordinators. The reason that we chose to go with Flock with an annual subscription is other vendors, they sell you the equipment, and then the equipment's pretty much upriver. So if the equipment goes down, It's more of an efficiency issue. Flock, one of their claims to customers is that they're able to detect when a camera goes down and then immediately, within 48 hours, repair the camera, thus minimizing downtime and increasing efficiency for the project.
And what's the purpose of the cameras? What do you see as a law enforcement activity that you will gain from the cameras that we don't currently have access to?
So they're a force multiplier. So they're able to read license plates of passing vehicles, and they're in the strategic plan to place the cameras. They're placed in areas of high traffic, retail, higher crime areas, to be able to detect who is coming and going from the area, or not necessarily who, but what vehicles are coming and going from the area. What that allows us to do is if there's a crime, say a retail theft at, say, Walmart, we're able to see what vehicles were in the area at the time of that crime in order to develop investigative leads.
Okay, so it's not to write tickets.
No, these are not.
I just want to help me out a little bit on the record here. I had
No,
some
and
questions from the public. This is so you can send me a ticket in the mail. And I'm like, no, that's not what we're after at all.
No, and to address
Okay.
Mr. Fredge's concern,
Right.
these are not traffic surveillance cameras. They are not red
Right.
light violation cameras. They're meant for investigative leads for major criminal investigations.
Perfect. Okay.
So riddle me this. If we had this system in place, how much quicker would you have apprehended the guy that was harassing the Tatro family? Theoretically, of course.
That's a tough one. Because I know details that would have thwarted the system.
Okay. And I just want to thank you guys for putting up with my myriad questions. This is a hard weekend to dive into deep details about civil liberties. I appreciate your efforts.
Supervisor Schutte.
So just to build on what has been said, so let's say there's an Amber Alert. Is there kind of notice now that, are you notified or something? How would that work? What brings your attention to now go to this particular camera?
So from the perspective of the officer on the street, Flock also integrates with the existing system that we have in our police vehicles now, which reads NCIC and other national databases for Amber Alerts, silver alerts, missing persons alerts. As officers are driving around or dispatchers are monitoring a station, if an Amber Alert vehicle passes one of these cameras, it pushes an alert to the officer's mobile terminal and dispatch to let us know, hey, this Amber Alert vehicle is now at this intersection where we've placed one of these devices.
Okay. Well, thank you so very much. Is there any additional public comment on this item? Just so I make it loud enough. Denny, public comment? Oh, from in there, buzzing. No, everything has to be on the record. Sorry. So long as you can get close enough for a mic to pick it up. You may stand if the mic can hear you. Oh, sorry.
Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. Thank you very much. And I appreciate the fact that these are well-intended and such. I guess when I'm looking at the money and I'm not having it divided by units, so I don't know how many units are going to be purchased, what their costs are. Actually, I was a little surprised about going into retail properties and having them in those areas. How many private areas, as far as public, would they be in, and would they be at parks and such like that? I'm really concerned more than a lot of people about that issue of privacy and the fact that this is great and there are going to be many opportunities for it to shine as a help for law enforcement and for all of us. But I am concerned that I'm not being told what this money's unit prices are and such, because I didn't find that. If it's available, I'll find it. But the count and the actual locations, you don't want to always tell people.
That's correct.
So I get that, but I'm going, I want to know where the money's going. And if it's going to be spread through the community, shopping, it's going to be spread to parks and such like that. I just like a better picture of it. And I'd also like the Plane Riding Act of 2010 it's got all the letters here, but the main thing is, some of these things are written fairly complicated, and you have to be an attorney, and I think we could do better. We could make it more laymanship. Yes, I have to do my homework. Yes, I have to try to figure it out, but that shouldn't be as necessary as it seems to be in some of these cases. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Any other public comment on this item? I don't see any. I'll bring it back up here. Supervisor Shooty.
I move to ratify the contract with the clarifying term as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Okay, we are now on to, we're going to let the sheriff just hang out for a while, but agenda item 15A, discussion and presentation on the biannual report on the Carson City Jail, conditions and information concerning deaths of prisoners within the jail. Mr. May.
Good morning.
Mhm.
Well, currently right now, my name is Captain Earl Mays with the Sheriff's Office. I'm the captain over the jail. Thanks for having us. Currently right now, we have had no deaths in our jail for the last 6 months. We're actually doing pretty good. The state of our jail is pretty much status quo.
And let me just ask, have you incorporated Mr. Horton into the schedule to take his review turn of the jail? One of the things in the law is that we have to do that. So I want to make sure Mr. Horton has been
You told him
assimilated.
it's a night in a cell, right? You told him
Oh,
it's a night in a cell.
Dinner in the jail.
Yeah, dinner in the jail.
Yes, all board members are cordially invited. We like to have at least one board member pass through the facility on a quarterly basis. That provides, in an annual period, a pretty good saturation of the board members. I do want to note that, yes, Captain Mays and his staff are doing a tremendous job inside the facility, caring for the health and welfare of the folks that are inside. Our medical facilities inside the jail are being enhanced, as well as using our partners, the Fire Department, EMS, Carson City Hospital, to ensure that all of the inmates receive the best care that we possibly can. I would make a final note that through a capital purchase that was approved for this upcoming year, we are adding a device into the facility that will help alert staff when a risk inmate is in medical
stress,
whose medical condition is declining. We very often see that in the areas of detoxing and such. We want to make sure that we get the earliest notification so that we can have the best possible treatment as rapidly as possible.
Yeah, this device actually is, it's kind of like it's an ankle bracelet that we put on them, and our booking staff will monitor through it like an iPad.
Huh. So it'll show you their heartbeat or pulses or things that.
Exactly.
Oh, interesting. Right.
Yep.
I think we've done a lot in the jail. You know, I think that every year we try to enhance it and bring it to more safety. That's the whole ultimate goal for both the officers and the people that we're caring for there. So we're doing a good job, and I welcome Curtis's opportunity to do that. No other questions on that? Is there any public comment on this item? We don't have a motion, but no public comment? Okay, thank you so much. Keep up the good work. In this case, a stat of 0 is perfect. Yeah, right? Okay, item 15B, discussion and possible action regarding the acceptance of a donation of 48 automated external defibrillations from the state of Nevada, funded by Leona M. and Harry B. Hemsley Charitable Trust at no cost to the city. Does any member have a question on this? No, this is wonderful. It's really great. It's pretty straightforward. I'll just ask the one question. It's 48 automated. Is that enough? Was 48 something we applied for and then the trust approved?
Yeah, Jerome Tushman for the record. I'm the undersheriff here in Carson City. So about a year and a half, maybe even 2 years ago, the charitable trust got a hold of us and said, what is it that you need? We're looking at putting this into marked vehicles. We looked at our list. We had 48 cars. We said, is 48 too much? They said, nope, we got this.
This is wonderful.
And well, and here, there's actually 3 reasons. One is acceptance. The second one is to thank the charitable trust for them soliciting us. And I will tell you, working in government for my entire career, this is the easiest grant. Matter of fact, so much I'm suspicious of it. I keep reaching out to the state saying, are you sure you don't need something from us, or what's the catch? And to my right here, we have Doug. He's from the Health and Human Services. So I also want to thank him. And he has a very short presentation. And then also I wanted to make sure that we brought this to the community to make everyone know that this is what we're doing, and will be a second layer of a first responder to a medical emergency. And Ms. Mayor, if you don't mind, I'd like
Please.
Doug to.
Doug Oxborough for the record. I work with State EMS. I'm also a prior deputy sheriff, and I've been there. I've been where you're in a critical cardiac incident, EMS is 20 minutes out, and you're a one-man band, and it's not a cool place to be at all. We were contacted by the Charitable Trust, and we're one of the last states that they're doing on this initiative. And the AEDs that we're getting here for the Carson City area are a very small portion of what's going on. We're putting in over 3,000 AEDs in first responder vehicles. That's your city cops. That's your sheriff's department. That's BLM. We're putting them in boats on Lake Mead. And it was kind of funny. One of their questions was, well, what if we go the other side of the lake where we're not in Nevada? Okay, it's a critical cardiac incident. It's not gambling. You can leave the state. It's okay. If it moves and has a first responder in it, we're going to have an AED. And these AEDs also will integrate to save historical data. And so 10 years from now, we'll be able to look back on it and see what an impact it's had. We're not going to have to guess. We're not going to have to say, well, maybe this was a good thing for the community. It's, you know, obviously it's a no-brainer having something like that on hand for a critical cardiac event. And this is just a small portion of that. So I want to actually thank all of the law enforcement individuals for being involved in this great initiative. We're going to save some lives.
That's great. It's fantastic. Did you have public comment you wanted to add?
I did. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Bobby Sullivan, for the record. I'm the program manager of the EMS office, and I want to say that we were approached and we were hesitant about the project in itself, and we are the last state receiving this grant. It's nearly $7 million for the deployment of all these defibrillators. We're more than halfway through the deployment, and depending on your view of this, we did have a deployment of a defibrillator earlier this week in a rural community. And it was exciting to see that there was no hesitation from law enforcement to pull out that device to see if it could make a difference. We are going to be getting that data and that information to see what we can do to improve outcome of sudden cardiac arrest in Nevada. And I think we're on the right track, and we greatly appreciate the project.
It's super exciting. I have complete faith in all of our officers. I know they want to save people. That's what it's all about. So this is exciting, and I would enjoy it if you would give me the trust's information so we can send them a thank you letter. That's a pretty big project. Are you telling me they did it in all 50 states?
No, ma'am. There was only 9 states.
9 states. Still, that's pretty phenomenal for someone to care that much. So if you can share that information, I'd like to write them a thank you.
We absolutely
Can
will.
we test drive these on the mayor?
Oh,
I'll look the other way.
Wow.
No.
that was mean.
I think we, yes, but no, it is an awesome project, and we're looking forward to the improvement of healthcare.
Perfect. Thank you. Anybody else? Is there any public comment on this item? Yeah, I'm not going to let Supervisor White make this motion. It might hurt. Supervisor Giomi.
I move to accept the donation on behalf of the Carson City Sheriff's Office.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. And again, thank you so much. Okay, we're now on agenda item 16A, discussion and possible action on a proposed collective bargaining agreement between Carson City and the Carson City Firefighters Association, local number 2251 of the International Association of Firefighters on behalf of certain non-supervisory employees of the Carson City Fire Department to be retroactively effective beginning July 1, 2023, expiring June 30, 2028, with an estimated fiscal impact of $2,941,590 above the 5-year projections in the fiscal 2024 city budget that was previously approved. Ms. Paulson.
Madam
Oh, wait,
Mayor,
sorry.
I-
Mr. Horton, may I have your disclosure? Yeah. Fireman, sorry.
NRS 281A420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. I have 2 sons employed with the Carson City Fire Department, and the proposed proposed collective bargaining agreement here would modify the substantive terms, conditions, and benefits of the employment for one of my sons. The judgment of a reasonable person in my position would be materially affected by my familial relationship. Therefore, I have a disqualifying conflict, and I will not be voting on this matter.
Thank you so much. Okay, Ms. Paulson.
All right, the only other thing I wanted to add, this covers almost 70 non-supervisory employees at the fire department. And for the estimated impact of 2.9 million, I just wanted to note that the finance department did factor in many of the proposed contract provisions when they developed their detailed 5-year projection for the general fund. So much of the fiscal impact has already been accounted for in the city's budget forecasts. And then I just wanted to thank both of the negotiating teams for all their hard work. It seemed like it went pretty smoothly, so it just takes a lot of time. Thank you.
Does any member have a question? Don't see any. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, don't see any. I'll accept a motion from anybody but Supervisor Horton. Supervisor Giomi.
I move to approve the agreement and authorize the district attorney's office to make any necessary revisions that are clerical and non-substantive in nature when finalizing the agreement.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no.
No.
Any abstentions? Okay, and I was a yes. So let the record reflect the vote was 3-1-1. So the motion has carried. Okay. We're now on agenda item 17A, discussion and possible action regarding the fiscal year 2024 audit work program and audit services recommended by the audit committee to perform by the city's retained internal auditor, Ide Bailey, for an amount not to exceed $110,000. So it's my turn for a disclosure. NRS 281A420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. My son is a partner at Ide Bailey. I have previously abstained from voting on the award of the contract to Ide Bailey as the city's internal auditor because I believe that the independence of judgment of a reasonable person in my position could be materially affected by my familial relationship with my son. Here, however, the contract has already been awarded. My son does not have any direct involvement in this audit, and the item before us now only involves procedural action in considering the audit committee's recommendations for the FY24 audit work program and making the allocation of previously awarded funds. I make this disclosure in the interest of full transparency, but NRS 281A420 requires abstention only in clear cases, and my familial relationship would not materially affect the independence of a reasonable person's judgment because this matter concerns a routine and procedural function. Therefore, I do not have a disqualifying conflict and will be voting. Okay, this one is Ms. Russell.
Good morning, Sherry Russell Benaboo, CFO for the record. So the audit committee is recommending the procedures that are listed along with the staff report. The The 24-25 risk assessment is an annual thing. They do that every single year to determine what audits will be done next year. So there's always a little amount, $10,000 to $12,000 in there to do that future year risk assessment. The fraud, waste, and abuse hotline, they monitor, so they're an independent party is monitoring that just in case I'm doing something somebody doesn't like. There is follow-up of $3,500 included for validations and that kind of thing. The actual procedures they're recommending is the Clerk Recorder's Information Technology Office. That also includes elections. I probably worded it incorrectly in the staff report. When myself and the internal auditor discussed this, these procedures, we've actually never done an audit on this system, internal audit on this system. And, you know, there's a lot of talk nationally about fraud every time we have an election. And, you know, the one that loses always accuses. So we just thought it was important to make sure Russia can't get into our system and there's no, you know, fraud going on. I mean, that's what internal audit does, is it makes sure your system is secure. It, you know, validates the integrity of the voters, basically. So that's what we're looking to do with that audit. The DevNet system, we have not audited that new system to make sure that all the information from the prior system came over correctly into the new system. So again, that's what we always do with a new system, is to make sure that it moved in correctly. And then cash handling, we have not done since fiscal year 18. The report was done in December of 2019. So we try to hit cash every 3 to 5 years, so it's about that time. And then the accounts payable and P card, they're gonna do a minor review since nothing has really changed, just to make sure the internal controls are still in place and functioning. That audit was done over fiscal year 19. Last time we audited it. If they do find an issue, then they'll probably do a procedure in 2025 to dive deeper into that. But it's only $10,000, so they're doing a high-level statistical just to make sure AP and P cards look reasonable. Are there any questions?
Does any member have a question? Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, I'll accept a motion.
I move to direct Ide Bailey LLP to proceed with the fiscal year 2024 audit work program as discussed.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous.
Thank you.
We're now on to agenda item 18A, discussion and possible action regarding a final subdivision map for the development known as Silvercrest Condos, resulting in the creation of 51 condominium lots on a 3-acre project site zoned multifamily apartment located on the northeast corner of East Olin Street and Oak Street. Heather, have all the conditions been met?
They have been.
Does any member have a question? Supervisor White.
Thank you. Condition 33 says that at the time of final approval, a homeowners association or similar entity must be formed and will be responsible for the maintenance of all common areas. I don't see those CC&Rs or homeowner documents in here. Are they?
We have them in our files, and they will be recorded concurrently with the map.
Yeah, I understand that, but I think they should have been in this packet since they're part of a called out document. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions? Seeing none, is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I will accept a motion. Oh, she's not coming up for, okay. Oh, sorry. Mr. French, you have public comment on 18A?
Mr. French, Carson City, Nevada. Thank you, Mayor. On this project, I looked up and I wasn't able to get anything printed up other than 4-sectional type deal, similar to what came out in the packet. I couldn't have sections. I'd have, the whole thing was on a page, one page, and I went to print it, and the librarian helped me, and it came out in 4 sections. And so I could fit them together if I strategically did it, but what it said I should be able to get is one, it would fill the page, or fit the page is a better way to put it. So there is an issue on that for this, even in your packet. So I don't know how they have to preset it, but for a person like myself to print it, I'm going to get help from Lisa on getting it printed as a deal, but it's after the fact in a sense. But that was very thoughtful of her. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other comment? Okay, I'll bring it back up here for a motion. Supervisor White?
I move to approve the final subdivision map as presented.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. It's somebody, are we needing a recess? Yes, we can. We'll be back at 10:30, so we're in recess. That's the whole reason for the button. Board of Supervisors back to order. We're on agenda item 18B. Discussion and possible action regarding a proposed resolution establishing the maximum number of residential building permit allocations under Chapter 1812, our Growth Management Ordinance. Ms. Sullivan.
Thank you, Mayor. As the mayor said, Municipal Code 1812 addresses growth management. Per the ordinance, the Growth Management Commission makes a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors relative to the number of building permits that will be made available in 2024 and 2025 and estimates the number to be made available in 2026 and 2027. They also make a recommendation on establishing the distribution of the total building permit entitlements to be made available to the general property owner category and the development project category. Development project means 31 units or more. And they also make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors concerning establishment of the maximum average daily water usage for commercial and industrial building permits as a threshold for growth management review. The Growth Management Commission met on May 31st, 2023, and recommended staying at the 3% growth for a total of 765 residential allocations in 2024. They did recommend keeping with the general developer distribution at 43%, 57%, so 43% for the general category, 57% for the developer category. But they did recommend earmarking 1/3 of the total allocations for affordable housing. So what does that mean? Actually, the municipal code contemplates that. 1812-040 establishes the categories of general property owner and development project. So it says that the city will have these two categories. But it also allows for subcategories as the board or the the Growth Management Commission deems necessary. So you have your two categories, general property and developer, and then you can have a subcategory within that category. So in reading the code and listening to the intention of the Growth Management Commission and making a recommendation to this board, I would say the affordable housing is a subcategory. The Growth Management Commission, also let me just mention, because the questions come up, well, how do you know if it's affordable and what's the definition of affordable and so on and so forth? We tend to know who our affordable housing developers are. We have an affordable housing developer who's about to do apartments over on Route near Northridge. That's Matt Fleming and his group. The Housing Authority's affordable housing, the housing over on Bud Eye's affordable housing. That doesn't mean it's 100% affordable, but they have affordable units. They also have market rate units. So what would happen is the developer who is doing an affordable housing project would need to identify which units are affordable, and those units would obtain the allocation under the affordable housing category. Everything else would be under the market rate category. So it would be up to the developer to demonstrate at the time of construction or seeking the building permit that he or she was providing affordable housing and demonstrating how many of those units are affordable. And typically that doesn't come from our market rate builders. We kind of know who's building the affordable housing because that's the business they're in. In terms of water usage for commercial and industrial building permits, the Growth Management Commission recommended decreasing that threshold from 15,000 gallons per day average to 10,000 gallons per day average. By way of background, the Growth Management Ordinance was originally implemented in the late 1970s in response to a moratorium by the State Division of Water Resources on new subdivisions in Carson City due to water and wastewater capacity issues. The program was developed in cooperation with the state to address these concerns. So now I'm going to talk about what's going on in Carson City. In terms of this is year-to-date through end of June. So what you'll see is in 2018, we had a high in terms of housing starts of 541. And you'll remember in that year, Carson Hills Apartments obtained all of their entitlements in 2018. 2019, 277 housing starts. It dropped pretty significantly in 2020 and 2021. 2022, we went up to 350 housing starts in year through end of June 2023. we have 215 housing starts. So clearly nowhere near 700 in any of these years, including 2018, where Carson Hills pulled all their permits in 1 year, even though it was about a 3-year build out. In this slide, the growth management residential allocation history, this is a good example where it shows that the allocation, the darker line is the allocations available and the white line is the allocations issued. So you'll see we pretty consistently, although in the 1980s we were hitting the issued versus available, we're syncing up. But really since then, we've been pretty below what the allocation is. In terms of residential permits by type, I think what's interesting here is when we look at our single family, 2021 versus 2022, you see a reduction. And I thought that was interesting. So what we've talked about in past years is in 2019, Public Works built a parcel-based model to analyze build-out potential. What they look at is they look at all of the city's policies, including master plan designations, zoning designations, what's already existing, and they look at and they put this into a model to determine how many residential units could the city have. Based on that model, Carson City has 24,464 existing residential units. Assuming all currently approved developments are completed at approved densities and all land designated for residential use are developed or redeveloped to the maximum densities, an additional 8,384 residential units could be developed for a total of 32,848 residential units. So if we use the census determined residents per unit, that would give us a population of 76,207 people. The state demographer has his own projections, and per the state demographer, the city's population of July 1, 2022 was 58,314 people. The state demographer's per the state demographer's projections, the population would only grow by 0.7% per year for the next 5 years. We usually at this time of year look at housing sales data. And if you look at the median price of a sale of a single family home in 2022 in Carson City, it was $520,000. In calendar year 2022, when we look at the number of home sales, we'll see that in 2022, there were 681 home sales, down from 981 in 2021. So we all heard in 2022 there was limited inventory, and this slide kind of bears that out. Methodology. I've had a lot of questions about the methodology, both by the Growth Management Commission and this board, and why is the methodology what it is? In 2006, the current methodology, which allows for a 3% growth rate, was established. Honestly, the formula is somewhat convoluted. So going through it, you look at the household size based on the census data, you look at what last year's growth was, and you build it by 3%. I also don't know where 57% to the developer category and 43% to the general category comes from. But I can tell you that since 2020, well, actually 2020, 2021, 2022, and year-to-date 2023, there have been no allocations issued in the development category. Everything's been issued out of the general category. So I am open to rethinking formulas. I've had folks come up to me and say, well, why do we have to do this formula? You don't have to do this formula. But if you choose to do this formula, these are the numbers where we would land. The Planning Commission kind of challenged the formula, but then sort of said, okay, well, 2% growth for market rate, 1% for affordable housing. That was kind of their recommendation. It doesn't mean that they're definitely sold on this formula. They sort of challenged it, but then they kind of let that go. So I want to be honest with you about that. In terms of commercial and industrial average daily water usage, the Growth Management Commission had asked Public Works to analyze water usage by the existing commercial and industrial customers. Public Works had to wait till things got a little more normalized after COVID, which they did. In doing that, they found that if 90% of the water users are using less than 10,000 gallons per day. So it's the recommendation of the Public Works Director that the threshold be reduced from 15,000 gallons per day to 10,000 gallons per day. That means the top 10% of the commercial and industrial water users, which means they're using in excess of 10,000 gallons per day. If more uses came in like that, they would go to the Growth Management Commission, which brings me to my next comment. You'll remember in 2021, the Growth Management Commission recommended and the board modified, but agreed in essence, to having some criteria that the Growth Management Commission could use for commercial and industrial requests to determine when they could use more than the threshold. The Growth Management Commission recommends that this language stay intact, and what this language says is that the Growth Management Commission must first find that the use utilizes water conservation measures and techniques, and if that finding is made, the Growth Management Commission must consider if the use will promote health, welfare, safety, or quality of life, or create quality jobs, or promote recreation and tourism. If both findings are made, an application under subsection 5 can be granted. We haven't applied this criteria yet because we haven't had anybody come in since this criteria went into effect in 2022. We've only had, I think, 12 requests for growth management in I think it was 11 years of data I gave you. So it doesn't happen frequently. So again, the recommendation of the Growth Management Commission was to allow the 3% growth to stay with the separation of 43% and 50% between the general property and development categories, and to reduce the commercial and industrial threshold from 15,000 gallons per day average to 10,000 gallons per day average. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does any member have a question? Supervisor Giomi.
Yeah, just a few, Heather, Hope, sorry. I still have vacation brain, so let's apologize. I like the idea of having some set aside for affordable housing, but I guess I'm struggling to see the practicality of it when we're not using the full allocation of the building permits anyway. I mean, I can appreciate the Growth Management Commission's thoughts, but unless those 145 have some accompanying incentive, I don't see that it makes a difference. We're not, nor have we come close to using all of our allocation. So I guess I don't understand the practicality of that. Unless I'm missing something. Do you think I'm missing something?
I think in the discussion at Planning Commission, they started talking about reducing the allocations growth to 2% instead of 3%. And then they started talking about the impact that might have on affordable housing because you're reducing the number of allocations, reducing supply, driving costs up. And so then they said, well, it kind of evolved. And so then they said, well, maybe 3%, but that extra 1% should be for the affordable housing. So we make sure that we don't restrict development in a way that precludes affordable housing or drives up the cost of housing. So it really was a conversation that evolved from let's reduce it to 2%.
Okay. I mean, this has always been a discussion we've had because, do we keep it at 3%? Do we reduce it to 2%? And the reality is, as long as we're keeping it at 3% and we're using roughly 40% of the allocated permits, it's almost immaterial what number we set it at because I think most people realize this. The number of home starts is, it's market driven. Unless we push it to the point where that permit becomes a commodity in and of itself, which is then going to drive the cost of homes up. This is market driven. And you start to see numbers in the out years of into the 800s, and that, that concerns me a little bit, but I just don't think we're ever going to see a year where I'm going to see 850 homes built in 1 year. I don't think we have the physical resources in terms of contractors or anything else to make that happen. So while I appreciate some of the comments that I've seen or heard from the public about, let's slow down on growth, the fact is we've been under controlled growth for nearly 30 years here. I think I looked back at one point, Mayor, I mentioned this figure to you. In a 10 or 12 year period, I think our population grew by 8,000.
Yeah.
In a 10 or 12 year period. So that's not uncontrolled, or in my opinion, unsustainable growth. So I guess. Right. It's 1.7% over the last, and I think you take that 1.7%, even carry it further back. So anyway, I mean, those are just my thoughts off the top of my head, because we get comments. I think I'm not the only one up here that gets comments that growth is out of control. And I don't think people fully realize that, just because a subdivision with 400 homes is approved means that those 400 homes are going to show up in a year, in maybe 10 years, or, there may be an entitlement. We just had an entitlement today that's been 2 years in the making. We gave them another 2-year extension, and there's nothing to say that will even be built in those 2 years. And those are just entitlements. Those are not permits issued. So while it's a little bit scary to see 836 up there, the other side again is that I don't think it's physically possible to build 836 homes in Carson City in a year's time, or even have 836 permits get pulled in a year's time. The next comment before I end is that I am in agreement with the water reduction. I think that's a good number. And I like the conditions that we set in there for exceeding that number. I think that's a real good compromise. I know Public Works has done a lot of work, as this board has, over the past 4 to 5 years, in terms of understanding our water system completely, understanding the amount of water we have, the fact that it is real water, not paper water, and how we process it. And so I'm in favor of that. So that's it. Thank you.
Supervisor Schutte?
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you, Hope, and I'd like to thank the department heads. When I sent out my questions concerning how does potential growth impact the departments in a way that isn't typically covered. And while it doesn't really influence the particular 3% growth or whatever is decided, the background information is so helpful. And I think I can see some information moving in a positive direction. So I thank you. I appreciate the discussion from the growth management and the discussion about the different, making available different housing types and affordability types to really be able to meet the needs potentially of folks wanting to live in Carson City. So to provide opportunities for perhaps lower income families to actually buy a home and establish wealth, to have access to that and to provide the inventory. I also, though, am very mindful of the growth in Carson, and so I think it's wonderful that Carson has that cap. I'm not opposed to a 3% cap. My question is, because we rarely, if ever, get to the allotted numbers, does that 3% always need to build on the previous year? Is there a possibility, and I would like to propose the possibility of capping the 3% at the 2024 level or 2025 level, to where, so if it's 2024, that every year that what would be allowed is the 765 units, that it isn't just automatically we make the number higher and higher, because I think that in itself leads a message that, you know, while we're talking about infrastructure and we're talking about impact of more vehicles on roads, or we're talking about, you know, water issues, and we're doing so well with water and availability, and kudos to Public Works and Andy Hummel and the team. But still, in light of longer summers and outside of this winter, typically drier winters, it is always, you know, water comes up in so many conversations. So I think capping at 2024 levels is showing that we are open for business, that it gives an opportunity for businesses to know that Carson City is growing. It also sends that message that we are very mindful of how we grow. I also thank you, Hope, in terms of, you know, we talk about build out, and in some of the public comment with the build out, then what happens? Then what happens? And so when we stop building, then we stop developing down the road, then we redevelop, then we reuse, we work with what is there, or you tear something down and rebuild. So I think that's important for the public to understand as well, that once we reach that cap, that build out, it doesn't mean that our community then dies. It doesn't. But we don't need to rush that either. And so it's really finding that nice balance. I, again, thank you for the insight that department heads shared. And I absolutely support the 10% or the 10,000 gallon threshold. Thank you.
Supervisor White?
Thank you. And for the record, I am at a quandary today why we are even considering this scheme that includes permits demanding affordable housing. And let me walk you through how I get to that conclusion. CCMC 18.12 is enabling legislation, meaning if it's not allowed in the code, it cannot be done. 1812 does not contain the words affordable housing. 1812 does not provide a definition for affordable housing. 1812 does not consider affordable housing. The Growth Management Commission has not and cannot provide a definition regarding affordable housing. In fact, when I watched the video, at 1 hour and 52 minutes, Commissioner Lloyd suggested this scheme before us today and said directly she did not have a definition for affordable housing. At 2 hours, Commissioner Borders said it is in the Board of Supervisors' purview to include affordable housing in the criteria for the Growth Management Commission to consider. At 2 hours and 10 minutes, Ms. Sullivan told the Growth Management Commission it is not in their authority to decide that affordable housing considerations will be used in their recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. In 2019, SB 473 defines affordable housing, but because CCMC 1812 is enabling legislation and does not refer to or rely on NRS or the NRS definition of affordable housing, it cannot be relied on at any point of the Growth Management Commission's activity, nor while adhering to CCMC 1812 as it is enacted today, can the Board of Supervisors rely on the NRS definition of affordable housing. So, how do we approve this residential housing permit scheme when the Board of Supervisors has not set a definition of affordable housing or included it in the allowable criteria for consideration? I suggest we cannot. The Growth Management Commission does not have authority to manipulate the criteria set by the Board of Supervisors in 1812. 1812-0151D, the Board of Supervisors finds and declares the criteria the Growth Management Commission will use to determine its establishment of residential building permit allocation recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. Affordable housing is not provided for in the criteria. 1812-0152, the Board of Supervisors declares that items A through I mandate the resources the Growth Management Commission shall use to consider growth in Carson City. Nowhere does affordable housing appear. As such, the Board of Supervisors nor Growth Management Commission have the authority to approve or recommend a forced 33% allocation of permits to be affordable housing permits. 1812-0152 does not include an emotional desire to allocate affordable housing permits. It's clear that 1812-025 gives sole authority to the Board of Supervisors to set the criteria to be used when considering the recommendation for the number of residential building permits to be allocated. Again, 1812-151, the Board of Supervisors finds and declares. 1812-152, the Board of Supervisors declares. 1812-153, the Board of Supervisors has determined. It is the Board of Supervisors that determines what criteria shall be used when the Growth Management Commission considers the number and nature of residential permits to be recommended to the Board of Supervisors. 1812-0253 allows the Growth Management Commission to set its own operating procedures, but it does not allow the Growth Management Commission to manipulate the criteria the Board of Supervisors has sole purview to set. 1812-0303 requires the Growth Management Commission to submit to the Board of Supervisors a detailed report of their recommendations 2 weeks prior to today's meeting. I have not received a detailed report from the Growth Management Commission, nor do I find a report in this agenda packet. The Growth Management Commission has not provided the Board of Supervisors with a justification for their deviation from the appropriate CCMC they should have followed. How do we approve a recommendation that has not been properly processed? 1812-035 does not contemplate a permit known as affordable housing. 1812-040 currently allows for 2 categories of residential permits, and affordable housing is not contemplated. The Growth Management Commission took no action to amend this code, so only 2 categories of residential permits are available to the Growth Management Commission at the time of this meeting. So I really don't know that we have even legal standing to make a decision today because this hasn't been brought forward to us in the proper manner. That being said, I would like to address whether or not affordable housing is even needed to be considered. So a lot of people have a lot of opinions about what sort of data that they repeat and throw around. Apparently, a lot of people don't trust staff to accurately describe what's going on in Carson City. So I went off into one of my rabbit holes, and I went to the Nevada Housing Division and found that they have produced multiple reports on housing in Carson City. I'd like to bring to your attention November 23, 2021 report called the Carson City Affordable Housing Brief. It tells us we have sufficient number of affordable housing units in Carson City. On page 2, it tells us there are round about 24,000 housing units in Carson City. I found another independent report that said 24,323. Page 12, table 3, shows that there are 12,834 affordable housing units in Carson City. That figure does not include the new complex on Butteye. Page 11 shows that 962 of those units are subsidized. Page 12 shows there are 9,400 households in Carson City that fit into the low-income category. So, more than half of the housing units in Carson City fit low-income definition. And we only have 9,400 households to fill those up. I think we have plenty. Page 9 shows that renters were most likely to pay between $500 and $999 per month in gross rent. I find that a little hard to believe, but this report comes from the Nevada Division of Housing. Page 10, figure 15, shows the annual average wage for Carson City to be just over $55,000. I don't know why people are having a hard time finding a place to rent other than the fact that there's not much vacancy. By definition, by any definition, we have sufficient affordable housing. We should not, in any case, attempt to manipulate the housing market by requiring affordable housing permits. So I would also like to address that we are constantly hearing that we are changing the characteristics of Carson City by allowing too many apartments. Hope, do you have those slides ready? This shows that we really aren't building as many apartments as people think. These next two panels actually come from the United States Department of Census. In fact, we're building more owner-occupied units than we are building rental units. And so the next one. This tells us how we line up across the country at several other, compared to several other communities. It looks to me like Carson City is doing a pretty good job of maintaining the character that we're all happy with. Just last night, thank you, Hope. Just last night, I came across this study. It comes from UNR, the Center for Regional Studies. It tells us that the average age of home buyers that are coming to Carson City is between 20 and 39 years. 1,980 of those folks came to Carson City in the last 10 years to buy a house in Carson City. I don't think we're pricing people out any more than it's ever been difficult to buy a house in this town. This idea of forcing affordable housing units really flies in the face of an open, fair market, because the way this is set up, the affordable housing permits as envisioned by the Growth Management Commission don't fall back into that whole bucket after middle of the year. So what do we tell a guy that, or a developer that spent January, February, and March in Cabo San Lucas goofing off? Oh, well, you you didn't get in line for non-affordable housing permits, so you have to build affordable housing if you want to make a living this year? I can't buy that. I understand this has been a long-winded rabbit hole I just drug you guys through, but I think it's important to really understand that this scheme before us today is not legal, and we can't do this.
So just to paraphrase, you're against this. Just to paraphrase, you're against this.
He needs a defibrillator. Okay, Supervisor Horton.
Have you ever heard the phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? It ain't broke. Everything's going fine. What are we talking about? There's no need to do this. I'm really kind of tired of hearing people talk about water too. It's getting frustrating because you have the utility department telling us, hey, we've got plenty of water, things are looking good, we're improving our production capabilities, we're in good shape, we can meet the needs. And if that's not true, I'm sure Darren or Andy could come up and correct me. And when we talk about sewer and things like that, we're in good shape, we're doing good. They're on top of it, and they've reported that to this board. Roads could use a little work, there's no doubt about that, but I don't think changing all of this information and growth management is going to fix that or bring more harm to it. This is wrong, and we don't need to bother with it. I don't know why it's an issue, and I don't know why these other things keep coming up as issues, because they're not.
Supervisor Shooty.
Couple of things. I don't remember if I said instead of the 43, 57, if it could then be 50-50 at least, just as you were saying, just to clean things up a bit. But I also would this board be open to 3% for 2024, and then in 2025 cap it at that 3% of 2025? And I say this every year, I understand that. Since we don't reach it and we're still providing a number that developers and people who own land want, if they want to develop, then they can count on that, then they can depend on that. So I think we're providing everything that even having a growth management number at 3% that keeps building provides. But I think it allows just for kind of a breath.
Supervisor Giomi.
Lisa, I just to directly address your comment, I've struggled with that myself and had the same thoughts over the years, and I go back and ask myself, okay, let's do that. Let's hold it at 788 for 2025. And I think, okay, well, what does that accomplish? And the answer is it doesn't accomplish anything. It really doesn't accomplish anything. Well, but what is the message? What is the message? I mean, we're not reaching that number. So I guess what I'm saying is I feel like it's a false message. It's a false token that doesn't have meaning. I'm not saying we shouldn't be concerned about outpacing our resources, but I really don't feel like we are. Because I've had the same thought that you've had. Let's hold it at 2. Let's hold it at 2.5. But when you look back historically, can you go back, Hope? Yeah. And just go back to the, you know where I'm talking about, right?
Back to the beginning.
There you go. Stop there. Oh, no, one more forward. So if you look at that, the early 80s, I'm not sure what happened where we, setting the number of permits in the early years of this growth management ordinance was something less than a scientific, well thought out message. So you can see that the number in 78 started at like 900, and then the next year it dropped to just over 400. So, you know, those to me are anomalies. And then in the late 80s, you know, we'd hit it one time and again the next year. But since then, we're not even close. So taking that number to 2%, you know, does it send a message? Yeah, I mean, maybe, but I don't know what the message is.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess I don't know what the message is. Because I feel like we are, as a body, articulating the fact that we are concerned about growth, that we want our community to move forward in a way that continues to represent the way the community is and the way the community will always continue to be, in line with the resources that we have. If we've articulated that, then I don't know that dropping the number really has any meaningful impact.
I'm comfortable with that, and I understand
So-
exactly what you're saying, and it's been my dilemma as well. It just doesn't make sense to me, and it's not, I mean, I'm comfortable regardless, so. But it doesn't make sense to me that we don't even hit the numbers, and
we
yet
still
the
raise the
number
number.
we keep going higher and higher and higher. When, also, when our build-out, it's not like our build-out is 200,000 and we're now at 58,000.
Right.
Our build-out is 75,000. And so to keep allowing for more and more and more, I think about a toilet paper roll, you know, and a little closer to the end of the roll. And so it goes, we're building faster, or we can build more and more as we get closer to our build-out. And it's just, yeah, yeah. I would feel I'd be remiss if I didn't put it out there. And I think if, for no other reason, it's really a good discussion so that anyone who's listening or worried about this or thinking that it is just without any thought, we continue to build. There's a lot of thought, and I'm very mindful of the process.
Yeah, and I, you know, I guess for me that you know, really what you're talking about with the toilet paper roll, to use that analogy, is that you know, you're adding more paper to the roll, and you're using less of the paper. You know, so you're putting a bigger roll on there as you add more permits, but not as much as getting used at the other end. You know, yeah. Anyway, the triggers or the concerns for me would be that Public Works comes back to us and says, we've got water capacity issues, or our crime statistics start to go up. You know, crime is going down, it's not going up. So our sheriff's office is doing a good job. We're opening another fire station finally for the first time in 23 years, which is needed. And we're not hitting those numbers. If we, to me, if we start getting close to those numbers 2 or 3 years in a row, then I think we have a different discussion up here. Then I think we say, hey, look, you know, we've done, and again, I just cannot see it happening. We've done 700 building permits 3 years in a row. And now our building permit number down the road is 1,000 because it's increased that number. You know, then maybe it's a discussion, but gosh, just the way the market is driven, and you know, we've got a contractor here, and I mean, can really anyone contemplate 700 homes, single units being built in a year in Carson? I think it's physically impossible.
Well, I get it, but then why is it something, I mean,
Why
it's
does
just-
the number have to be that high?
why does the number have to, or why does it keep growing? You
Well-
know, that there, and
So for me, if you start pulling that back, if you look at that chart, there's 5 times that you've potentially set up Oklahoma land rush, and we end up acting like Tahoe Basin trying to get a building permit.
Yeah,
Because then their
that's what I
value
come
is so
back to.
high.
I mean, because
but I
yeah,
understand.
yeah, but in a peak scenario where you do hit a peak year, you're gonna, we as a board are gonna artificially affect the value of a building permit, and that's not something I'm comfortable, doing.
I appreciate the conversation,
Anyway,
thanks.
it's a worthwhile conversation, I think.
Will you go
I-
back to the page that shows me the actual housing units, the one that was the
Oops.
not pretty graphs? I want the one with the numbers, okay. So, one, I really want to appreciate what the Planning Commission was trying to accomplish. Do I think that this regulation as proposed meets their intent and has enough sufficient detail to implement it? The answer is no for me. When I really dive into this, I'm like, I have to have a definition because you're considering isolating a building permit, right, for somebody. Well, then you better define it. Not, I know you are one. We didn't say you have to have housing funding. We didn't say you have to accept HUD vouchers. I mean, we've got nothing in there to articulate that. Also, I don't see where there was thought into, would those 255 roll in at the 6-month mark if they weren't utilized? Do they roll into the general? What happens to them throughout the process? And so what I really want to go for this year is just sticking with the 3% and really have the Planning Commission and anyone else comment on the growth ordinance itself to say, why do we have 57% and 43%? I think in the old days, people came in for a development. Now they want to shop as you go, right? I'm going to pull the building permits on the homes that I've sold or the couple of spec homes. They're not going to come in and put in 250 houses. And Mark's here and he can tell me, nope, Laura, you got that totally wrong. But I don't want to change it this time because we haven't vetted it. We haven't really looked at it. But I question why we even have the categories at this point anymore. And so I look at this time just doing the standard 765 and the 788, but then over this next year, really looking at, is there rationale behind our decisions and what we want to do and where we see it? So that's kind of where I'm sitting, but.
Can I make one more comment on affordability and housing and despite Supervisors White's research, I mean, you can't argue with statistics, but I know anecdotally that those numbers seem crazy and
They do.
and off to me. But
There's no way.
But I think
People aren't paying 500 in
I think
rent.
there are better ways to address inclusion of affordability
Yes.
in developments. For instance, allowing expanded number of expanded density for in exchange for a percentage of workforce inclusion within a development. I mean, as opposed to an isolated workforce housing development. So I don't think. I think personally, I think that's the way to do it. I don't think this is the way to do it. So when you're ready, I think I can make a motion to fix that.
Not ready yet.
Just
Is
let
there
me know
any
when you're
public comment on this item?
Expected much more, actually.
Mr. French,
Thank you very much, Mayor and
you're singing to us now.
sorry, supervisors, and thank you for, am I? Thank you. I think you did the mayor and all of that, and Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. Thank you very much. I'm actually a free market type person and an open deal, and we shouldn't be telling someone they have to take in low or whatever on who's earning what. They're looking for a market to fill their spaces, and they'll get what they can. And if they overdo it, then someone will go somewhere else. My thing is that I would be more concerned than these numbers to have how much can Hope and them do in a year as far as permits. It's a big, darn, dang big deal. And it takes time, and they have a certain amount of time to do it in. So if all of a sudden they get flooded, like a lot of people all of a sudden have materials, they have labor, they have the okay as far as how much water, how much sewer, how much it impacts on the community. and they want to build, and there's like 1,000 going in all at once. How do they put their names in a deal and you pull it up and then you work the process of
First come,
permitting?
first served.
Right, right. But then you've got considerations about people going into a situation where they lose their funding, they can't develop, or in the midst of things, well, whatever reason they get in, they have to get out, or circumstances change. So I'm not so worried about who gets where and how fast it does, if it stays within our means of being able to get those permits out properly and to be able to review their purposes and each of their specific needs. So this whole thing almost seems like it's an argument or a discussion about stuff that really does, well, like you said, certain aspects of it didn't fit your idea of necessary. I think it's gauged on the wrong things. Does staff have enough time to do adequate reviews? And can we sustain it with our ability to have water, gas, electric, and services? So get 100,000 people want to do it in 1 year, and we build out to our limit, and all the property is all sold and developed in 2 years instead of 3. So I'm just saying, this sort of seems like a little bit of a interesting, but it's not gauged in my thought thing. I'm sorry. This doesn't match my considerations. I'm more concerned about Hope and the staff and such. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mark Turner, Nevada Builders Alliance and Silver Oak Development. For the record, just a few comments. Right off the bat, I agree with Curtis. If it's not broke, don't fix it. And one of the things that this current model allows, or prevents, I should say, is the commoditization of building permits, which is always a bad thing. That should never happen. With these numbers, that prevents that from happening. The other thing that dictates the pace of development are capital markets. Right now, the capital markets are really struggling. Financing for bigger projects is difficult, if not impossible, to obtain at this point in time. But that will end, and then those windows of opportunity open again. For example, if an apartment complex comes online and it's a 200-unit apartment complex and it's a needed complex in Carson City, that's 200 building permits, and we can't have partially finished apartment complexes. They can't just pull part of them. You have to have that upper ceiling limit to allow for multifamily in addition to regular single family. And I might just add, in terms of the land that's left in Carson City, there's very little land for large PUDs left in Carson City. In fact, maybe there's some stuff on the east side, up Highway 50 there as you're getting ready to leave town. But for all intents and purposes, our big land for doing big subdivisions is gone. It's over with. And there's not really a lot of individual lots left for general property owner type of building permits. There's very few vacant lots left in Carson City. They've been kind of used up the last 5 or 10 years, and there haven't been very many developers who are just putting in a development of lots to then sell to the general public, to John Henry Jones, who may come in, just buy a lot and build his own house. So I think that the way it is right now is fine. Carson City has grown over the average over the last 20 years, very slowly by comparison to all the surrounding communities in like a 100-mile radius of us. We've grown very, very slowly. And I think maybe from a perception standpoint, there's some outcry about development being too crazy right now. Well, we didn't do a thing from 2006 to 2018. Nothing. I mean, look at the numbers. There was hardly anything built in Carson City during that time. So perhaps people's perceptions were altered by the fact they didn't see anything happening for a long time. And now that there's a modest rate of growth in Carson City, everyone, not everyone, but there's a cohort of people that lose their minds every time they see a set of tractors come out to clear a field. So just in closing, I think it's fine the way it is. We don't have a growth problem, and I think you do need to have that upper limit on there to allow for apartment complex and whatnot. Okay? Thanks so much.
Supervisor Schutte, did you have a question?
Well, I just, if it's okay, Mark, I appreciate
please.
what you said, and the whole idea of the commoditization of permits, that is important to keep in mind. So,
Well,
thank
the
you.
reason I say that, there was a time, I think in early 2000s, where things got close, and then we had to rush in and buy like 40 permits just to make sure that we continue what we'd already started. And you don't want to get into a situation like that if you can avoid it.
So you didn't go to Cabo San Lucas that year?
No, didn't go to Cabo San Lucas this year either. Maybe next year if I'm lucky.
Okay, is there any further public comment on this item? Supervisor Giomi, you think you have it?
Well, I'll give it a try.
Hey, Stacy, before you do that,
Sure.
maybe it is just as easy as going to the resolution on page 680 that was proposed to the Growth Management Commission. It
619,
doesn't
you
have
mean?
that affordable housing
No,
stuff in it.
It's
Yeah.
literally one sentence that I think we can take out of the resolution.
Oh, okay.
Let me give it a try. I move to adopt resolution number 2023-R23 with the removal of the following words in item number 1, following now therefore, of which 510 shall be made available for market rate housing units and 255 shall be made available for affordable housing units. Those words would be removed, and number 1 would now read, beginning on the first city working day in January 2024, the building division shall make available a total of 765 residential growth management allocations for building permits, period. The 2023 year-end balance of unused allocations shall be voided and returned to the utility manager. The allocations for residential building permits shall be dispersed as follows, : That's the motion.
I second.
See anywhere else, Mr. White?
I didn't think any. Is there anywhere else, Adam, that you caught?
I didn't, Adam Tully, Deputy District Attorney. I didn't see any, but it might be good just for the motion to include any other conforming changes necessary.
And I will add
Office.
to my motion that the DA's office would make any other conforming changes necessary to remove references to affordable housing units.
The
Still
second
second.
continues? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Okay, is everybody doing all right? We'll keep on going? Okay. We are going to recess as the Board of Supervisors, and I'm going to call to order the Redevelopment Authority. May I have a roll call, please?
Chair Bagwell,
Here.
Vice Chair Giomi,
I am still here.
Member Shudi,
Here.
Member White. You have a quorum.
Thank you so much. We're on agenda item 22, which is public comment of the Redevelopment Authority. Do I have any? I don't see any. We'll move on to item 23, approval of our minutes of the May 18, 2023 meeting.
I move to approve said minutes as presented.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. We're now on to agenda item 24A, discussion and possible action concerning a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors regarding the expenditure of $25,000 from the fiscal year 24 redevelopment revolving fund to support the various arts and culture events and projects. Mr. Earp?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and the board. All right. So annually, there's $25,000 that is allocated for arts and culture. Close that out. Programs and events from the redevelopment revolving fund. Last year, there was $50,000 available, but we're back to $25,000 available this year. So we opened that up to nonprofit organizations and other organizations that run arts and culture related events to apply for grant funding. Up to, if it's a new project, they can apply up to $10,000. If it's a reoccurring project, then they can apply for $5,000 or up to $5,000. And organizations can apply under both categories. So you'll see some repeats that they applied for either a new project and also a recurring project. And so on April 3rd, we opened up applications and we received 11 applicants. During that time, that totaled $69,500 in requests, which is a lot for only $25,000 available. So there's a breakdown on the staff report of those 11 organizations or applications and the allotments for it. And then those were given to the Cultural Commission for review, and a new process was set aside by our Arts and Culture Supervisor at the time to do a score sheet, try this out this year. So ahead of time, the Cultural Commission reviewed, and they each individually scored each applicant according to the criteria that are listed here, and given different points. And then this is all of those totaled up. So I was given those, and this shows 72,000, but one of those was changed. The Historical Society was actually only $2,500 in request. So it's actually 69,500. But this was the total of all their points added together and scored so that we could present those back to the Cultural Commission, and then they could make the decisions based off of how they scored, which was a new process for them. And then I'll open up. So this is basically how it was scored and and ranked based off of, like I said, priority was given to new projects, which means that they were, for every year that a project was reoccurring, they got point deductions. And so those points were added into this total. So these include the deductions and the total scored. And so based off of this information, this is how the Cultural Commission decided that they wanted to allocate the $25,000. Basically, they decided to give each organization half of what they requested, except for on the rank 7. They only got 4,000 out of 10,000 because that was just what was remaining. And then there was no funding available for the remaining applicants. But that is basically how that went. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Does any member have a question? Supervisor Giomi?
Just a quick comment. I listened to the meeting and appreciate the support you provided in Sierra's absence and the work you did to help guide them. So thank you for that. And I want to thank the Cultural Commission. This was not an easy task for them. I know they struggled with this, but just to thank them publicly, they did a good job.
Does any other member have a question? So I just have a comment or something in general to help me understand. So when I look at some of these and they're labeled a new project or a recurring project, so I look at some of the particular applicants and they'll have a new show every year, but how are you distinguishing new versus recurring? Because I think they're still recurring, not new. Just because I put on a different play or a different thing, I'm still the same organization doing the same type of activity. It's just a different show. Because one of the things for me in giving these dollars was to really emphasize that we wanted new projects. And so I'm going to support what they did here, but I was disappointed. Is not one of these truly brand spanking new? Never been here before, and yet it didn't get the $10,000, which is I thought what our intention was, and then we would decrement them each year, and over the 4 years you'll be successful and not have to visit us again. And we left the recurring to slowly decrement them so we didn't pull all the money out from underneath them. And so I just questioned for the future and where we're going. Like I said, I'm going to support what's done here, but the whole idea was to bring more culture, more arts, not the same arts. And so I'm just it's hard for me to explain to Capital City Arts Initiative that they don't get any money, but the Mile High Jazz Band does. They've both been here a very long time, do superb work. And so, anyway, I just bring that up as a thought process when whomever is next working on things. I really appreciate the score sheets. I think that helps keep things on the up and up. But I really would like some more concentration on the truly new. Like I said, because I was a little bit disappointed not to see the 10,000 awarded because I thought that was our intent for new projects.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I know that the score sheet, I think, is overall well-received.
Yeah.
First year using it, so there's probably how that scored will probably take some adjusting over
Okay.
the next couple of years as they kind of fine-tune the deductions and
Right.
kind of how that all plays into everything.
Perfect. I look forward to that. Again, nice job. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, Supervisor Giomi.
I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of the expenditures as recommended by the Cultural Commission.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Is there any final public comment for the Redevelopment Authority? Okay, I don't see any. Then we're going to adjourn as the Redevelopment Authority and reconvene as the Board of Supervisors. Let the record reflect all members are still present. Item 28A, I'm just going to open this item as we've just heard it. Discussion and possible action regarding a proposed resolution authorizing the expenditure of the $25,000 to support the arts and cultural events. Is there any other question? Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, Supervisor Shooty.
I move to approve resolution number 2023-R-24.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect that was unanimous. And again, thanks for pitching in there. That was probably great surprise. Yeah, you're like, what? Me? Yeah, thank you. We're now on agenda item number 29A, discussion and possible action regarding a business impact statement concerning a proposed policy for public electric vehicle charging stations on Carson City-owned property and right-of-ways, including fees to be charged for the use of those electric vehicle charging stations. Mr. Schultz, Mr. Martinovich, take it away, Chris.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager. This item before you here today is really the second of 3 items related to our electric vehicle charging policy. This item is related to a business impact statement. Following our discussion at the Board of Supervisors back in March, we prepared a business impact statement and distributed to a number of companies and agencies in the area, including a number of charging infrastructure companies who supply this equipment for this type of use. We received no comments as part of that, and that is all documented and provided into the business impact statement as provided in the materials. Going forward, we will be, following approval of this, we will be bringing forward the final adoption of the policy in a coming meeting, in the next couple of meetings, and we'll move forward with the policy as we have. Other than that, I'm happy to take questions. Nothing really specific I wanted to highlight as part of this.
Supervisor White.
I guess just a little follow-up on our email exchange earlier. At 3.0, I'm still a little concerned about the sentence that says, the terms of this policy will not directly apply to a public utility or private vendor that owns and operates an EVSE on a city site. Part of your response said that there are cases when a fee is not allowed and cannot be charged, as is the case with any EVSE installed by NV Energy through NV Energy's ERTEP program. So I guess the bottom line, since we require the fee, we won't be cooperating with NV Energy on a ERTEP program?
So just as a little bit of background, the ERTEP program, as they refer to it, is a program that NV Energy has initiated authorized through the state legislature and the Public Utilities Commission in regards to deployment of a variety of transportation electrification elements. One of their programs is for electric vehicle charging infrastructure, and should they approach us for installing a site, we're not allowed through that program. We, as colloquial for NV Energy, the city, everybody, allowed to charge a fee for the profit of the use of those particular electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So if NV Energy were to approach Carson City and say we want to install a site here, we'd have to have a serious discussion about is our site, the city's right of way, a city site as defined in the policy, the best place for that NV Energy equipment.
As far as I'm concerned, if they want to give electricity away, they can do it on their own time. on their own dime, not on the taxpayer's property. So, just wanted that clarification, and with that, I'm good with the policy.
Supervisor Gioni.
I know the policy's coming back to us, Chris, and I don't remember if the comment I'm about to make I sent to Dan or to you. I might have sent it to Dan, and it might have gotten lost in that transition. But some other policies that I've reviewed online from other local governments charge in the same manner that we get charged for our electricity, not by time, but by kilowatt hours. And I'm wondering in the final policy if that isn't a better way to, because I'll leave it at that. I would just like to have you potentially explore if that's a better way, an easier way, or if it's a more difficult way to collect the fee.
We're happy to look into that for sure.
That's all I would ask before you come back for finalization.
Very good, thanks.
So that wouldn't eliminate the loitering part of the
No,
deal, though,
the
right?
loitering would stay, but instead of an arbitrary rate of $4 an hour, it would be based
Yeah, I
on
understand.
whatever number of kilowatts they use to charge your vehicle.
Yeah, I just want to stay in the realm.
No, I
that
agree.
people
Loitering
can't
needs
park
to
there
stay
all
because
day.
they're taking a parking spot. So I think that, I think that loitering fee needs to stay. Totally. Thank you.
Is there any public comment on this item? Mr. French?
Mayor and supervisors, thank you very much for your patience with me. I'm getting my composure at the end of the meeting. But the main thing is that I think it should be both by wattage and by time. And those things would be up to the person. You want to spend however long there, you're going to pay a bit for the rent. But as far as kilowatts, what your vehicle can take in depends on what kind of charger you're using. Tesla's got the best qualified now, and the one that most people are taking on is their use and such for fast charging. Otherwise, you're sitting in the sun for quite a while waiting for your vehicle. Most people turn their air conditioning off so that it will charge faster, so that ends up getting their heat more. So my thing is that both should be fine. And I think similar to what we're getting taxed as far as gasoline and diesel, they're getting off pretty well with all the considerations that the states and the country are giving them as far as rebates and considerations for purchasing electric. So I don't want to hit them harder than seems fair because they're trying to do their part for the environment, but I'm not that keen on the type of batteries that they're using right now, and those may be ruled out very soon with new studies from China with other options that are not lithium. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, I don't see any. Supervisor Gioni?
I move to accept the business impact statement as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Thank you. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. We're now on to agenda item 29B, discussion and possible action regarding a proposed reorganization of the Carson City Public Works Department. Mr. Schultz.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'll try to get done before afternoon. This item before you, we are looking to do some little tweaks to the department overall. As you know, some that have been here longer than others, things ebb and flow with what we do and how we do it, and we're not opposed to change. So I apologize if I'm here too often, but at the same time, we adjust when the things are right to adjust. So what we're proposing here today is to combine a couple of divisions, specifically our utility divisions, water and wastewater, into one. This is something that has been within the department in the past. In my time here, they've been combined and uncoupled 3 different times. So it ebbs and flows with what's going on. By doing this today and the plan forward, by no way am I saying that forever that will be the right fit, but it certainly is today. So we're looking at combining the water and the wastewater division into one and to be managed by a utility manager. That title, job description, is something we've used in the past. As I stated, we've had utility managers in the past. So we're looking to go back at that. We're able to do that because of some accomplishments that we made within the utilities over the last few years, some pretty good heavy lifts. And we feel like our road forward is certainly, it's not, we're going to have our challenges, but we have a good path forward and feel like it's an appropriate time to do that. Also creating a new division, which is kind of essentially internal services division. So all work that the Public Works Department does for outside Public Works divisions, outside other departments, we'll be reporting up into this division. So that includes the asset management, fleet services, facility management, and real property program would be under this new division titled City Asset Services Division. So the idea is a one-stop shop. This is something that's been on our table, our radar for a number of years, and it's just the appropriate time to make that happen. If you put this all together, there is no increase in total number of staff. There's, because of the combination of the two divisions into one, there's no increase. There is some changes to overall funding, but in the end, it's a credit, a total amount of credit that is coming back to the city that these changes will make if this was to go into effect. But some of the funds, changes, some go up, some go down across the board, depending on how these positions are funding. This, again, is our best guess of how these positions, what they'll be working on. As you know, with our department, we have cost allocations, and so projects are direct billed, and so potentially some of these could come down, not necessarily go up, but if they're spending their time on projects, we can bill those projects, capital projects directly. So I'm going to finish there and open up for questions before I get too far into the weeds.
Does any member have a question? Supervisor Giomi?
On the, are we set on the qualified individuals and that whole issue with, does this utility manager have to have that water? Because I didn't see it in here.
It's responsible charge,
Yeah,
is what
thanks.
you're referring to. Yeah, so we fixed that as part of when we kind of redid our job descriptions
Right.
for some of the lower levels, supervisory levels. We fixed it there.
Okay.
And enough time has passed, enough turnover has happened so that we're covered
good.
there. Yes,
So you
we're
don't
good
need
there.
to have it here.
We don't need to have it here. Obviously, that individual will, get various things as time in the seat, but we do not need this position to hold that title anymore.
Okay.
And we've had that already approved by NDEP
Okay.
before today.
Before bringing it forward.
Yes.
They may at some point hold that
That's true.
because you need time in position.
That's right.
To be able to get there.
Yes,
So,
yes.
so
But we
just by
always,
nature of doing that.
our goal always has been to get, yes, if they have it, great, but to get away from that and have it at a lower, more hands-on level.
Right.
And we're now there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Oops.
Does any member have any other questions? That's okay, I'll clear you. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, well, Supervisor Giomi, would you like to make the motion?
I would love to, Madam Mayor. I move to approve the proposed reorganization of the Public Works Department as presented.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. The record reflect the motion was unanimous. We're now on agenda item 30A, discussion and presentation on a final report concerning the 82nd session of the Nevada Legislature. Mr. Wood, come on up. It's done. Oh.
Thank God. Good morning, everybody. It is still morning. Stephen Wood for the record. Before I dive into some bills that passed and didn't and ones that were vetoed that I think are important to the city, I wanted to start by thanking you all for placing your trust in me during the legislative session to represent you And I also wanted to thank not only the board members, city manager, the department directors, and DA's office for all of their help in analyzing bills and putting together the city's position and making sure that we were all on the same page. So wanted to start with that. Thank you all again. So as you all know, the legislative session concluded on June 5th. We were all very busy because there were over 1,096 to be exact, bills introduced during that session. So we needed to look at pretty much every single one of them to make sure that there wasn't an impact to the city. Of those bills, 610 passed both houses of the legislature. 75 were vetoed by the governor. The city actively monitored 314 of those bills, of those 1,096 bills, for their potential impact to the city. Of those bills, you all took action on 18 of them. And with that, I'd like to go through some of those bills, and please feel free to stop me if you have any questions, and we can go over that. So I wanted to start, and I think you've seen the memo that's posted with this agenda item, so I'm going to run down some of those. I'll skip a few, but if you want me to go back, please let me know. The first is AB 20. These are the bills that were approved, passed both houses and approved by the governor. This one revises provisions relating to water. So the board supported this bill on March 2nd, and it makes state funds available for local water and sewer projects. And I believe the Public Works Department is reviewing that for its potential impacts, but I think it has the potential to benefit the city. Next, AB 58, which revises provisions relating to regional commercial air service in this state. The board supported this on June 1st. Previously, you had supported AB 429 on April 6th, which they ended up being the same bill until, what was it, Madam Mayor, 11:15 on the last day of session, when $10 million was pulled out of the bill. That $10 million would have gone to support and facilitate commercial air service among regional airports. However, the $2 million that remains in the bill for the Fund for Aviation is meant for grant match dollars for FAA infrastructure grants for airports. So there's an estimated 30+ million in federal dollars that $2 million can bring down. So still some good things came out of that, but we had to fight for it to the very bloody end. Next, AB 60, which revises provisions governing local improvements. You all supported this on March 2nd, and this is the bill that streamlines the process for updating neighborhood improvement district assessment roles. This is a good bill sponsored by the Nevada League of Cities, and we think next year this will help streamline that process and make it easier for everybody involved. Next, briefly, AB 140 passed. This bill makes Juneteenth a state holiday. AB 213, which revises provisions governing residential zoning. The board opposed this on March 16th. However, there were some amendments on the bill during the final week of session, which made the bill a little less onerous. However, our community development department will still need to do some posting on the city's website regarding permits, when they were issued, how long they've been outstanding, things of that nature. SB 11, which the board supported on March 16th, requires the Department of Public Safety to adopt regulations authorizing the use of drones for certain purposes, building and fire inspections or those purposes. The board supported an amendment to this bill, which was included in the final version, and the governor did sign the bill. So thank you all for your review of that. Again, that was a League of Cities bill as well. SB 16, which was Carson City's BDR, which revised our charter. This was the one and only bill that Carson City was able to introduce this session, and the bill did pass as the board approved it. This is one of very few bills during the legislative session that there were no amendments to, although there were a couple proposed amendments, but we were able to keep the language clean get it through just as you had approved it, and it was signed by the governor. SB 18, this is an interesting one that was not brought to the board because it had very little impact. However, I think it's worth mentioning. It revises the requirement for planning commissions to meet monthly. So if there's no agenda items for a planning commission, they don't have to meet monthly. They are only now required to meet quarterly. Although I think our planning commission probably will have plenty of items. There are plenty of rural areas that don't. So
just get a
if
little
we
bit.
were ever in a situation where we had no items, we could skip a meeting of the planning commission. SB 22, this one I think is very important to the city. This was a NACO bill. It revises provisions relating to publication of legal notices. The board supported this on March 2nd. And again, it allows for a lot of flexibility actually in posting legal notices. It allows us to post them online so long as we subsequently post them in the paper. But when we do that online posting, that's when the clock starts instead of being in the physical paper. So for a jurisdiction that doesn't have a daily newspaper, that's a big deal. So great bill. I also wanted to mention SB 118. Which revises provisions relating to public health. The board did not take action on this. However, there were some changes to it last minute during the session, but it makes a $15 million appropriation to the Division of Public and Behavioral Health to fund health districts, which would include Carson City as the division's designee in this situation for the specific purpose of public health. So it's very broad what we can use the funding for. And we've already been in talks with our Department of Health and Human Services about some good things that we could potentially spend this money on. SB 205, which revises provisions relating to off-highway vehicles. The board supported this on April 6th. It did pass and was signed by the governor. This one I wanted to bring up as well, SB 226. Which the title of the bill changed, you will notice, from the first time when the board took action on it. It used to say revises provisions relating to public works. Now it says revises provisions governing governmental financial administration. And the reason why is because there was a very significant amendment to the bill that gutted most of its provisions. So now the amended language that passed essentially targets the leasing financing agreements. I think we discussed this a little bit instead of these broad declarations about public works and prevailing wage. And they kept that piece in there, amended everything else out, and then created a mechanism in statute to create I can't remember the exact term, but basically a health research district for UNLV to be able to expand their medical school. SB 235, which revises provisions relating to pretrial release. This was not brought to the board because it initially had very little impact on what our courts were doing, but there was an amendment late in session that allows for flexibility in scheduling pretrial release hearings if all parties agree, and it allows them, in statute, it allows them to use remote communications for those hearings. It also enables the DAs and public defenders to receive a stipend if they have to conduct those hearings on weekends or a holiday. SB 338 also passed. The board opposed this on April 6th. However, I will let you know that the bill was gutted by an amendment, and the final version only changes the definition of a large all-terrain vehicle. So,
Amazing, isn't it? Legislation.
yeah. Well, we can talk offline about that particular list, Mr. Giomi.
This is a long.
So next, I would like to move to bills vetoed by the governor, and I will say that this list here took a lot of work, not only on the city's part, but also all local governments working together to make sure that some of these bills that I'm going to mention here made this list and were vetoed by the governor. And again, the governor did break a record this legislative session. He vetoed more bills than any other governor in the history of our state. We'll see what the makeup of the next legislature is to see if those vetoes are sustained, but we are glad to see some of these bills made this list. So the first is AB 172, which revises provisions governing collective bargaining for local government employees. This bill would have required public employers to provide personal information, including personal contact information, home address, cell phone number, personal email address of employees to a labor organization unless the employee had specifically opted out in writing. So it would have been required to be given to the labor organizations, I believe quarterly in the original language, and then upon request after that, unless the employee had taken the initiative to opt themselves out. Next is AB 235, which revises provisions governing public works. The board opposed this on March 16th. The bill would have required the payment of prevailing wage on all custom fabrication, plumbing, pipe fitting, HVAC, sheet metal, and signage for any public work. Next, AB 258 enacts certain provisions governing the confidentiality of certain personal information of a donor, member, or volunteer of a nonprofit organization. I will tell you that this was probably one of the biggest fights of the legislative session. We struggled with the proponents of the bill to get them to amend it to make it more palatable for local governments, and they flatly refused. So we kept working the bill. We were able to bring it to the governor's attention, and he did veto the bill. And the reason why we were so opposed to it and why you took the action that you did on April 6th was because it created such serious liability and implementation concerns for local government. The bill went so far as to require us to keep confidential the information of an organization that had applied for nonprofit status. Not even been granted nonprofit status, but applied for it. Just sent in the application to the IRS. So it was a bad bill, and we're grateful to the governor for that veto. Next is SB 81, which revises provisions relating to regional planning. This would have required coordination in planning amongst Carson City, Douglas County, Washoe, Story and Lyon counties, as well as Reno and Sparks. And it created a committee of city managers and county managers among those jurisdictions, as well as adding 4 legislators to that jurisdiction. And they would have had to have come up with a plan, a joint plan for regional planning by a majority vote of that committee. So we had serious concerns with that. A lot of other jurisdictions did as well. There were some other concerns regarding the appointment of those legislators to that committee and who did that appointing. But we are grateful that the governor took this action on this bill, and I know a lot of the other counties that I just listed are grateful as well. Next is SB 272, revises provisions relating to governmental administration. This bill would have required local governments to post demographic information regarding the contractors that they've hired for public works projects. This information would have included race, sex, sexual orientation, and veteran status. It also would have required that we post how much each of those contracts were that went to any of those minority groups. It would have been very onerous for us to, 1, know those details about our contractors, and 2, to post that information. We had serious concerns with it, so we are grateful again for the governor's action on that bill. Next is SB 301, which revises provisions governing the circumstances under which a worker is deemed to be employed on a public work. This would have required that prevailing wage be paid to those who haul materials to and from a public work, and it created an impossible scenario for local governments to implement and track. So again, that bill was vetoed. And last on this veto list, I'll mention SB 433. Again, this is a prevailing wage bill that would have codified an extremely broad definition of a public work for the purpose of paying prevailing wage to include any non-monetary elements. So things such as inspections that a city does, maybe doesn't charge for, that becomes a public work. Even if it's a private development or project. And that would have required them to pay prevailing wage. So very, very broad bill that the governor did veto. And now briefly, I'll run through a few bills that that should be brought to the board's attention that actually failed to meet legislative deadlines. So the bills died before the end of session. You took action on AB 14, which created the Business Licensing Working Group, but you'll recall that its original version would have forced consolidation of business licensing throughout the state within the Secretary of State's office. So you originally opposed it on February 16th, but then supported the amended version, which created the working group on April 20th. This bill failed in the Senate to meet the committee passage deadline because of the change. So nothing lost there, I don't think. Next, AB 104, which allowed cities, incorporated cities to have additional BDRs for charter amendments. The board supported this on March 2nd. However, again, the bill failed to meet committee passage deadlines.
In the Senate, correct?
In the
It passed
Senate.
out of the Assembly.
That is correct. Yep, in the Senate.
What was their issue?
My
Was it timing, or
understanding,
was there an initial issue?
there was an
she did want
issue.
more
I was
bills.
told that the Senate
Senate.
leadership did not want to add additional BDRs for following sessions.
So instead of 1,000, we have 1,017, and they couldn't handle that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Seriously.
Yeah.
If we
17
all-
counties.
If we were all amending charters,
Yeah,
cities.
exactly.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
even offered an amendment to the bill, which was
10
accepted
years.
in the Assembly, that further limited the number of times that a city could use that provision within a 10-year period, and it was still unacceptable to Senate leadership, so.
Okay.
Next is AB 240, which you all should be familiar with. This revises provisions governing the cultivation, growing, and production of cannabis by certain persons. The board supported this on March 16th, and it would have limited the number of plants that could be grown in a home grow operation, as well as requiring that they be in an
Fully
enclosed and
enclosed.
secured space. And it would have given local governments the authority to enforce those provisions. However, the bill failed in the Assembly to meet the committee passage deadline as well. Next, AB 297, which is another pretrial release hearing bill sponsored by Assemblyman O'Neill. The board supported this on March 16th, and it would have exempted pretrial release hearings, the time frame, that 48-hour time frame. It would have exempted weekends and holidays from the calculation of that. And again, that failed to meet committee passage deadline in the Assembly. Next on the last page, skipping ahead, I will go to SB 51. This is the county pay bill, which the board supported the amended version of on March 16th. Again, it would have given a raise to all county elected officials who haven't received a raise in a very long time, and set the formula for future raises. That bill died in the Senate for committee passage, but then an additional bill was introduced on the Assembly by Assemblyman O'Neill. That would be AB 529, which actually passed the Assembly but failed in the Senate. So we were grateful for that last-minute action. However, it just didn't make the cut this time. And the last bill that I'll mention today is SB 233, which revises provisions governing taxes imposed on heavy equipment. The board opposed this on March 16th, and all local governments worked very hard on this bill, whether it be to amend it or make sure it didn't have the votes to pass. And it would have, for your edification, would have resulted in lost revenue by exempting heavy equipment rentals from the personal property tax. So that bill failed in the Assembly on sine die. It failed in a very rare floor vote that a bill did not pass. This was one of them. It did not get the votes on the floor of the Assembly. So with that, if you have any questions, let me know. But again, thank you all for placing your trust in me, and I think we had a relatively successful, albeit busy, legislative session.
Ms. Paulson?
Did all available BDRs get a file?
No, sir. No, there were still some additional BDRs. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but there were some legislator BDRs. They didn't get what they wanted out of drafting and decided to scrap the idea. So there were a few individual BDRs that did not have language.
City Manager Paulson?
Can I ask her a question about, oh,
She has,
if
she
she has
raised
something
her
on
hand.
this?
Yeah.
Okay,
did.
sorry. I just wanted, before we went to the next agenda
I was just going to
item.
make a comment. I just want to thank Stephen. I think you did an amazing job. This is the first year in I don't remember how long that we had an in-house government affairs liaison or lobbyist. And I'm just so glad to say that the transition went so much smoother than we could have ever imagined. Even in the middle of session, I think he ended up taking on League of Cities. And I believe that the city departments and all the elected offices were just thrilled with how the process worked. So, thank you.
We made a great decision.
Comment on
Yeah.
that. We've spent in the past more money than we would have spent on Stephen, don't get any ideas, but on outside staff and I don't, I mean, not to degrade their efforts, but I feel like having an in-house employee who is there time and again with our board, with our department directors, with city leadership, puts us in a better position to have him understand where we're all coming from. And I think it was very successful. The fact that a couple of us are on NACO and League of Cities legislative bodies helps, and I think that's imperative that we stay involved in that. At the same time, it's one more avenue for information to flow to and from Stephen. But I'm very happy with, because I was concerned too, like we all were. I'm very happy with the way it went, and with Stephen's efforts and staff's efforts as well. So thank you all.
Our hired gun, we didn't have to share.
Okay. Is there any public comment on this item? You have public comment.
I just want to say through you, the mayor, and to the supervisors, to thank you, Mr. Wood. Got to observe you in action, and your attentiveness and your involvement was really appreciated. So thank you very much. Would you want to do this again?
No plans on leaving.
Okay. No, I meant specifically
He
legislative.
just got married. He can't go anywhere now.
Okay. Well,
It is his job, so.
okay, I'm sorry. I just wanted to know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we're now going to move on to agenda item 31, our non-action items. Does anybody have anything? Anybody have anything to share? Okay. We will have a closed session immediately following adjournment. We are now on final public comment. Do we have any? I don't see any. So with that, we're adjourned. Thank you all for a good meeting, and we'll just take a 5-minute. It'll be a